All right, welcome everybody to the RAC meeting, Southern Region meeting here in Richfield. This is being held in person at 6 p.m. May 20th at the DNR complex here in Richfield, Utah. And it's also being streamed live on YouTube. I'll read my introduction here. Appreciate everybody who came. This is a public forum where you can express your ideas and opinions about wildlife management. We will consider your feedback and report them back to the Wildlife Board. The Wildlife Board, not the RAC, is set with setting wildlife policy for our state. Wildlife management is complex and sometimes it's even emotionally charged. We all have ideas and opinions about what is best, and that's why we're here today. Please, if you want to express your opinion tonight, we've got some green comment cards. Fill those out. Tell me which agenda item you want to speak on, and we'll call you up when your time comes. We expect those in attendance to respect the people who speak, especially those who hold views that don't align with your own. Respectful behavior helps us to have a good meeting where we can listen, digest, and address the concerns on all ideas. Disrespectful behavior includes booing, yelling, cheering, or laughing at someone while they are speaking. Please help us maintain a respectful space. If this behavior occurs and is disrespectful, we'll ask you to be respectful. If it continues, we'll ask you to leave. We have plenty of law enforcement here tonight that'll help us. Please turn your phone on silent if you can. If you need to step out and take a call, no problem. There's also restrooms behind. For this meeting tonight, the top microphones are not on like they've been in the past, so we'll just be using these microphones up front. But if you can step outside to have a conversation, that helps us. Well, tonight we'll welcome all of our RAC members that are here, and we'll ask them to introduce themselves. We've got a few online, but we'll start here in person. Verlin, you want to share your name, where you're from, and what you represent?
Verlin King from Bicknell, representing agriculture.
Russ Gardner, I represent the Farm Bureau.
Riley Roberts, Tropic Utah Sportsman.
Chuck Chamberlain with the Forest Service out of Cedar City.
Bryant Johnson, Public Large out of Monroe.
Thank you. Online, we've got Rachel.
Yeah, Rachel Bullis, Cedar City, Watchable Wildlife.
Thank you. Bart.
Bart Batista, Kanab, Utah, Watchable Wildlife.
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn Cox, BLM, Cedar City.
Thank you. And Tammy.
Tammy Pearson, Beaver County, and elected official.
Thank you. I don't see Chad yet, so. I'm Austin Atkinson, the chair of the Southern Region, and I represent Public at Large from Cedar City. We'll welcome all the DWR staff that's here tonight. Some have traveled quite a ways to be here. We appreciate them. And we have a few Wildlife Board members, looks like 3 of which are participating online. Randy Dirth, Kent Johnson, and Gary Nielsen. So thank you for joining in for tonight's meeting. Welcome to all the public that's here. Some are watching live on YouTube. Those that are watching online will not be able to comment. They have already submitted comments if they wish to speak on anything. Those that are attending in person can comment on any agenda item. Let's see. Presentations will not be shown tonight. They were provided previously online, and we hope you're able to review those. So we will move on to agenda item number 2, which is the approval of the agenda for tonight and the minutes from last meeting. So RAC had a chance to review those. Go ahead, Verlin.
I was online last time, and when you kind of did this introduction, you said that
Verlin, move your mic just a little closer if you could.
I thought I heard you say that now on to be a RAC member, you have to have a hunting license. Is that right? Did I hear you say that?
That's true. Kevin, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, Berlin, that came out of a bill in the legislature. There is an exemption actually for the ag representatives, though, that they are exempted from that requirement. But yeah, we had a law passed this year that was included in, so.
All right. Yeah, that was my next question, where it came from, but so the ag rep is exempted.
They are.
Uh,
Although I think most of them probably have licenses, but they don't have to.
not all of us.
Not all of them, but
Thanks, Verlin. Well, we'll entertain a motion on the minutes and the agenda.
I'll make a motion, Chair.
Got a motion by Riley,
Second.
second by Tammy. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous in the room. And 1, 2, 3, 4 online. That's unanimous. Thank you. Looks like there's no hands raised currently, right? We're good. Okay. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 3. This is a Wildlife Board meeting update. I will provide that. This Wildlife Board meeting was in Farmington on May 1st. The first agenda item was the taking big game rule amendments. There was one motion made to ask the division to look at the use of aerial equipment for hunting and retrieval of game. That was placed on the action log. It was mainly in regards to the use of helicopters and other aircraft as they clean up some of those rules. The second motion was to approve the rest of the taking big game rule as presented, passed unanimous. The deer permit recommendations. The deer permit recommendations were passed as presented. That was with the reduction of the Beaver West restricted permit numbers of 500. We had asked in this RAC for a lower number than what was presented of 900. The DNR changed the recommendation before the Wildlife Board meeting, and that did pass at 500. That's how many permits were issued. For the once in a lifetime permit recommendations, there were 2 motions. The first one was to ask the division to look at procedures of how to contact or notify hunters when a sheep hunt is available due to a lone wandering sheep or disease outbreak. That was added to the action log, and the division is to report back to the board. That was looking at more management type opportunities for when sheep are having issues. The rest of the once in a lifetime passed as presented. Bull elk permit recommendations passed as recommended by the division unanimously. Same with antelope permit recommendations. Those passed as presented. Antlerless permits for all species passed as presented. And CWMU antlerless permits as well. So it was a shorter meeting than we've had in the past for permit recommendations. The landowner permit rule passed, let's see. They asked the division to look into the private landowner vouchers in relation to losing points and incurring waiting periods. The proposal is to be brought to the board as an informational item prior to presenting it through the public process like the RACs. That was placed on the action log. I feel like that one comes up about every year, every other year, as far as getting private landowner vouchers. Do you lose your points? What waiting periods are there? So they want to clean some of that up. There was a motion to approve the rest of the changes as presented, with the exception that they add in the criteria for HB 202 tags to evaluate public benefit. So that's the new landowner elk program, where the division will be able to make the decision this summer which landowners that don't qualify for CWMU, but they put in for the draw or they get awarded elk tags on their limited entry units, and how they meet that criteria. It's a little bit of a complicated one. We'll see how that goes this summer. The Expo rule amendments passed as presented, and the CWMU buck and bull recommendations for a few CWMUs passed as presented. Sound good from, that's all I had from the Wildlife Board meeting. So that was on May 1st. The draw did happen according to those permit numbers that were passed and the draw results came out on May 14th. So congratulations to all those that drew a permit. Agenda item number 4, we'll go to a regional update from Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Adam, if you'd pull that presentation up. Okay, so starting with our wildlife section. So spring turkey hunts, we're in the middle of those right now and getting positive reports back. We've also did a small transplant of some turkeys moved from Texas and released out on the Oak Creeks. And we're looking, trying to answer some questions there, comparing the transplanted birds to resident birds in terms of clutch size and nesting habitat and survival, to see if we can add some genetic diversity into those populations and get and increase survival. Our sheep out on the Mineral Mountains, after 2 good years of moisture, are doing well. We've observed somewhere around 26 lambs. And some lambs maybe still being born there. And then if you want to see baby lamb or baby sheep or lambs, right now the east side of Zion is a really cool place to go watch bighorn sheep. This is one that's pretty scary. Over the last couple of years, we've been getting periodic reports of feral pigs down in Washington County, in both the Virgin River drainage and the Santa Clara drainage. Every time we get one of those reports, we investigate it. Up until recently, we haven't been able to confirm those. Within the last 6 months, we have confirmed those, and we've been working with Department of Ag, who've been really, really aggressive with us on this, because we do not want feral pigs getting established in the state of Utah. Brought a helicopter down after we kind of zeroed in on where they were, and in one day they moved 43 feral pigs from the Santa Clara drainage down in Washington County, and we're continuing to monitor that situation, and we will be as aggressive as we possibly can, and along with the Department of Ag, to try to keep feral pigs from becoming established in Utah. This is kind of a cool story. These pictures kind of tell the story. One of our biologists, Kyle Christensen out of Panguitch, got a mortality signal on some bighorn sheep. If you look at that picture left, if you look close, there's some sheep trying to crawl out of that hole on the kind of in the middle of the top of that picture. And there's also a couple of dead sheep down in the bottom. Those sheep had gone down in there, probably looking for water, and couldn't get out. And that was the mortality signal that Kyle got. He went in with another one of our biologists, and just lucky for those sheep, Kyle was a team roper in high school and had his rope with him. The sheep that were still alive, he roped all 3 of them, and they hoisted them out of that hole. And we have not, that I'm aware of, had any more mortality signals on those sheep. So right guy in the right place, or we would have lost all of those sheep. We're in the middle of our depredation settlements for big game right now. We're also trapping beavers in nuisance areas, working with water users there. We're scouting areas to ban sandhill cranes. This is important. It comes up in this RAC every year with wanting to get a sandhill crane hunt here in Sevier County. And this is an effort to continue to collect data so we can make the case to make that happen in the future through the flyway. In Garfield and Iron counties, we're doing our Utah prairie dog counts, and also over in Wayne County. We've got some bald eagles that are being watched very closely in Iron County, and have become kind of have a lot of people that are watching them closely there, because they're in a place that's very visible. We partnered with Mule Deer Foundation to put on a guzzler and a fence over on the Thousand Lakes unit. And we've done some work on Elbow Ranch, and I'll tell you more about that here in a minute. The aquatic this time of year for them, or one of the real busy times of year, where they're out doing all their spring netting and looking at fish populations. And right now, again, we're benefiting from 2 good water years. Unfortunately, we may be at the end of good water years. It's appearing right now, but our reservoirs are still benefiting from that. Minersville, Trout catching size has returned to where it was before we hit drought in about 2000s. Utah chubs are low, which means the wipers are doing their jobs and people are catching a lot of fish at Minersville. Otter Creek, again, rainbow trout fishing is really good. Utah chub numbers are low, which is good. And they caught a new state record wiper out of Otter Creek. It was over 18 pounds. Newcastle Reservoir, again, large wipers. We transferred crappie in 2024 from out of Gunlock, and they're doing well. And some large channel catfish that are being caught in Newcastle right now. Colog Reservoir, we had some years where we didn't have very good survival, it appeared, and we had either little fish or big fish in Colog. We've kind of got the distribution of fish back in all of the size ranges there, which is healthier for the population. Panguitch Lake is fishing really well for rainbows, cutthroats, and tigers. Again, Utah chub numbers are down from where they were. There's going to be a lot going on at Panguitch. There's a new dam being constructed this summer, and we're working closely with the water users. That picture that's just on the right there, one of the issues that faces Panguitch Lake, because it's a natural lake, the dam isn't the deepest place on the reservoir. The dam was there just to raise the water level. And we have a bunch of nutrient loads down in the bottom of the deepest parts of that lake. And that's why we get bad algae blooms in Panguitch Lake. We're trying to design to incorporate a siphon in with the new dam that will allow us to pull that kind of dead water out of the deepest parts of Panguitch Lake and should make that lake a lot healthier in the future if we're able to pull that off. So we're working closely with the folks in Field County and the water users in particular that own that dam, and they've been very supportive through that process. Spring fishing, as the results from the netting you would expect, people are enjoying really good fishing right now. And those are pictures from the bottom one there is from Newcastle, and the one on the right is from Paiute Reservoir. And County Field Office, Western toads are an endangered amphibian, and we've been working in the Ponsegont drainage to recover those and having first evidence of natural breeding, which is a really good step forward there and will help us with the conservation of that species. Desert tortoise, again, an endangered species down in Washington County. We're in the process of doing our surveys there that happen every other year. Gandy Warm Springs is out in the West Desert. There was some illegal releases of what are called armored catfish. That picture on the lower right, they're really ugly. And when they treated the reservoir, the things actually crawled out of the water on their pectoral fins. They kind of creep me out, to be honest with you. And they've done a lot of work on spring snails. Lots of work with riparian restoration going on in Washington County. That's on the southwestern willow flycatchers, which is another endangered species. We do a lot of work with threatened endangered species in Washington County. We're always working on trying to remove smallmouth bass from Quail Creek because of the threat that they pose to our endangered fish species down there. And we're doing their monitoring down there right now as well. Habitat section, Elbow Ranch, we established a pivot. We had water rights and we own the land over there. It was previously irrigated. We put a pivot in about 3 years ago. And you can see the circle on those. All of those dots are locations we got from satellite collars from our deer, and you can see the outline of the pivot in the middle of that picture. The deer and elk have found it. It's doing so well, and it's helping us with depredation issues over in that part of the state. We've established a second pivot that just went in about 2 weeks ago and got planted, and we're hoping to double the amount of forage that we're providing over there. And it's worked out well because we also have we've partnered with a local grazer, and there's they're getting to graze at certain times of year and helping us take care of the pivot. That property is in transition right now, but we will be putting that out for bid to find another ag producer there in Paiute County to partner with on Elbow Ranch. Our outreach section, again, a busy time of year for them. Bighorn sheep viewing event earlier this month out on the Mineral Mountains was very well attended. They did a catch and cook event that's really popular out at Gunlock, where they set up a bunch of fryers on the shore and help people process and cook their fish right on the banks, and help people learn how to utilize particularly the crappie over there. They've got a fly fishing event in Richfield next month. The Utah Hunting Skills Challenge will be going on at Lee K up in Salt Lake, June 20th to 21st. And I'm sure there'll be some people, some kids from this part of the state that'll be competing in that. And then just a reminder to dedicated hunters to start checking the website and getting your hours in. Law enforcement, some of the officers here in the area have received some awards and deservingly so. First Stetson West was recognized as the Officer of the Year. Butler was awarded what they call their Damn Good Job Award, and the Trainer of the Year. The officers have been busy working bear and turkey baiting cases, and then spring fishing is in full swing. So they've been out checking fishermen primarily on the weekends. And that's all I have. I'd be happy to address any questions. Go ahead, Russell.
Gotta get the button down right. So question on the pigs in Washington County. Can you tell me exactly where those were located?
They kind of went from in the Santa Clara drainage up into the Shivowitz property down there. And so we worked closely with the tribe as well, and they're working closely with us, but it's in that Santa Clara drainage kind of from the Shivowitz tribal property down. It's in a pretty isolated area right now, but
well, there has been sightings in the town of Pine Valley, and so I was just curious how far up they had found them.
We don't know exactly, but the quicker we can get reports and verify them, the more aggressive and effective we can be. So I'd encourage anybody, if you get viable reports of feral pigs, let us know, because that's the last thing we want established in Utah.
Chuck?
Yeah, you mentioned we're moving some turkeys from Texas to the Oak Creeks. I'm assuming those are Rios. Do we have any Merriams in the Oak Creeks, or is it all Rios there?
No. Merriam's, I don't think, went any farther north than the Boulder. Is that, am I right there, Heather? And I don't know that we have many pure Merriams left, to be honest.
I was just curious.
Yes, that's correct. We didn't take any Merriams there. They're all Rios from Texas, and we just have Merriams on the La Salle, Bajo Mountains, and Boulder area, some in Washington County, but like Kevin said, most of those are Merrios.
Yeah.
Verlin?
You left out the good job you did burning the Bicknell bottoms on habitat.
We did do a burn in Bicknell Bottoms, along with some of the local private landowners, burned on the same day, and it was a successful burn. So,
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Kevin. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, dedicated hunter rule amendments. More specifically, banking hours and some changes there. We got Brian Christensen here. Brian, welcome. Should we open it up for questions, or do you have any clarification that you need to provide us?
Making just a quick 20-second overview to kind of recap on it.
That'd be great.
In case there were questions that need to be asked. So the proposal we have is basically to look at dedicated hunter applicants. For example, if they apply to be dedicated hunters in the drawing and they draw, then we'll go back and look to see if they did any service from January 1 up until the draw results date. And if they did that service, we would merge it into their new 3-year term. So it's not a the clarification made here is that it's not a perpetual earn it, save it for years and years and years, and then use it. It's just an expansion of a window that allows them more time to get that just before they join. So other than that, I'll take any questions you have.
Any questions from the RAC? Brian, I had a question about, it said something about approved projects only. So someone that's volunteering at a RAC or a banquet, is that an approved project?
So approved projects, it's always been that, but we keep that language in there because sometimes I'll get somebody that calls me and says, I just cleaned up my neighbor's yard and got all the old lawnmowers out of there and the oil rags and whatever else. That's not going to be an approved project. So it's got to be an approved project. All of those are going to end up either on our website or somebody contacting us first, setting that up, getting approval, and then otherwise, if it's not an approved project, it'll never end up in our system. We won't know it existed. There are some projects that really shouldn't be part of the dedicated hunter program either. So it's same as always. It'd be
So the hours you're banking before you draw, the same hours, same stipulations apply to after.
yeah. Yep, no change there.
Riley?
Do you have an idea of how many individuals you think this might affect?
How many will take advantage of it?
Well, I'm just, as I listen to the presentation, I like the idea of giving them a little bit more time, but I'm also a little bit against them not getting some kind of a reward of some kind for doing hours. If they're not going to draw out, then the division just got a whole bunch of service for free.
Yeah.
And I would sure like to think that number may be minimal. It's just it's a personal thing. And so do you have the information on the draws for this year?
I don't
as-
have it yet. As far as who.
How
this
applicants versus successful dedicated hunter draws?
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. We could dig that up, I'm sure. If I just haven't seen it come across.
And if that is the case, is there something, and I have no idea, Brian, just talking here, if that's something that the public or the RACs wanted to look at in the future as far as, and I don't even know what kind of a compensation or reward or something that would be, because I'm also against banking points and all of that, again, carrying over and over and over. Sure. And I would hate to see that with that as well. But I do like the idea of them getting something for the hours they spent and not getting the dedicated hunter tag.
Yeah, and it's a good point. Of a lot of the dedicated hunters I've talked to along the way, because this has been a topic. I've been working with dedicated hunter for nearly 14 years. So this is not an unfamiliar topic for me. And just in the last year and a half really has been when we could really put this kind of thing in place, because we just didn't have a system that would accommodate this kind of a storage and this kind of accumulation, go back and find. We just didn't have it. So now that we do have, the dedicated hunter registrations for projects is now online. So we have tools that we've just not had before. And so I've had lots and lots of conversations with dedicated hunters, and the far majority that I've spoken with, and I'm sure there's a lot of different opinions out there that just haven't made it to me yet, but the folks that have reached me have generally just asked for a little bit more time. They don't want extra time in the second and third year. They just want that first year to be a little bit easier to get those hours. And so last year we dropped the hours from 8 to 6, and we're in our now going to be second year to see how that affects. But the feedback I've gotten already is that was a big difference for people, because that's maybe just 1 day worth of project instead of potentially 2. So the feedback's really good about that, to the point where some of the dedicated hunters that wanted the banking concept before are now pretty content with the 6. And others are liking this particular proposal because it expands their window from 3 months to 6 months worth of time that they can do it. And it really kind of focuses on dedicated hunter applicants who are most likely going to draw. So if you're looking at the odds and looking at the unit you want to draw, and your preference points or whatever, you're more likely to see that I'm either going to have a chance at drawing this unit this year, or it's a year or two out. And the ones that see that they're probably going to draw are the ones that are going to take advantage of this. And so they're really the likelihood of somebody doing the work that's paying attention to the draw odds and not join is fairly low when it comes down to it. So
Thanks, Brian. We'll go to
Yeah.
Tammy.
Mine was more of a comment instead of a question, so I took my hand back down.
Oh, we'll save that for a minute. Any questions from the public? All right, seeing none, we'll summarize public comment. If you got that, Kevin. Coming soon.
On this item, we had only 4 people that expressed an opinion or entered a comment. 3 of them were strongly agreed and 1 of them strongly disagreed. And so there was general agreement. The one person that wrote out a comment expressed some concern about giving hours to people that are helping with sportsmen's banquets, but we have, that's an issue we've been dealing with a long time, and we have rules kind of there's sideboards set around that. So I don't see it as a huge concern. But Brian.
So that's a great comment, and it has been a recurring concern from dedicated hunters and other hunters in the past that we offer opportunity to earn dedicated hunter credit while helping the conservation banquets. And the bottom line of it is that we need those banquets to be successful because they sell the auction, the permits, and that money comes back into habitat, comes back into division projects. And so we're supportive to some extent of those banquets being supported with dedicated hunters. What we did very consciously change this past year, though, and we started doing it last year, and this year we held a really strong line in the sand with all of the conservation groups, is that in order for them to ask for dedicated hunters, we make it posted online every time. They don't get to just come to us and say we have 3 or 4 people of our own or that we've already chosen, and we want them to have credit. Instead, we say, okay, you need 8 or 10 or whatever the number is, and then we put it up for all dedicated hunters to have a chance at doing, and not just kind of a private group. So it's spread it out so everybody has a shot at it.
Thanks, Brian. All right, we'll open it up for public comment, but I have no public comment cards on this agenda item. If you have one on this agenda item, bring it up.
Go ahead and go to the mic.
And we've got a shared mic tonight. So
Nick Dax.
Nick Dax, we will give you 3 minutes. Share your public comments.
Thank you. Nick Dax, representing Utah Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Southern Region. We support at Utah BHA the proposed update allowing hunters to bank their hours to apply for the dedicated hunter program within the same calendar year. The reason why we support that is because our members participate in a variety of projects, and we would appreciate the opportunity to have those hours count towards the dedicated hunter requirements where applicable. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. All right, that'll close public comment. We'll go to RAC discussion. Tammy, did you want to lead off with your comment?
Sure. And it's always going to come back to agriculture. So I can't remember who it was that said, dedicated hunter ought to get a prize or compensation for putting hours in, whether they draw out or not. And I was just going to say, welcome to agriculture. We've donated and donated and donated for years, and now we're in a draw. Just for example, I've got 15,000 acres, and might pull a couple of tags if we're lucky. But just a snide remark. Sorry.
Thanks, Tammy. Other comments from the RAC? Russ?
I just want to second what Tammy just said.
Thanks, Russell.
I'll third it.
We got a third. We're looking for a fourth.
Yeah. She's
Any
right,
other-
right on the mark. It's yeah, what she said is right. And we're dealing with it every day.
Thank you. Any other comments, RAC discussion? Okay. My only comment, Brian, is as someone who studies a lot of draw odds and how difficult it is to get a tag, the dedicated hunter draw odds are virtually impossible to predict. We've tried to build models off it. I've dealt with Lindy, but the way the draw works, you cannot accurately know how many dedicated hunter CORs are going to be given out in the draw. So it makes it very difficult to be for certain that you will draw that year, even with a lot of points. And we saw that this year on a lot of dedicated hunter draw, but someday maybe that'll change. I'll entertain a motion. Chuck?
I motion that we accept as presented.
Got a motion by Chuck to accept agenda item number 5 as presented, second by Bryant. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Unanimous. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to agenda item number 6. This is a conservation permit program rule amendments. With Mr. Covey Jones, who got lost and stayed home, but he's online. Welcome,
How are
Covey.
you, Mr. Chair?
We're doing great. Any clarification needed?
I think this one's pretty straightforward. Just a few tweaks to the rule. One was a commitment that I made. It was from this rack to move everybody to the 31st, and then folks thought that was too many people hunting during flights and move bighorn sheep unit permits back and move everybody back. So, and then the rest is just to help us have an MOU with Antelope Island that's more favorable to sportsmen.
Perfect. Any questions for Covey? Covey, could this mean on Antelope Island, just curiosity, if it could go up to 2 deer permits in the draw and still stay 1 conservation, when right now it's been 1 and 1 because we've been scared to do more?
Yeah, so the way that the rule was written is that for every public draw permit, you had to have a special conservation permit. So it would have had to have gone from 2, 1 and 1, right to 4, 1, 2 and 2. And this says now, no, you can have a conservation permit, but the rest of the permits on the island go to the public. And so, yeah, this allows us to write the MOU differently and to get more public benefit out of hunting on Antelope Island.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the public? All right, we'll summarize online comment.
Really, no written comment other than just one that expressed their objections to the conservation permit program in general. But overall, there was support. 2 people strongly agreed, and then we had 3 people additional that were neutral on it. So overall, there was support.
Thank you, Kevin. All right, I have no public comment cards. Anybody intend to comment on this one? Don't look like it. Okay, RAC discussion. Looks like Tammy wants to go first. Go ahead, Tammy.
So kind of a question and a comment, I guess. The conservation money, and I know we have so many different conversations about this and it kind of circles around, but are any of these funds that came in on a specific tag, are they specifically spent on that same unit or area, or does it just go into a state fund and then the projects are decided beyond that?
So I'll answer the question 2 ways. One, on Antelope Island, previous to this, the way it was written in the rule is that all the money went back to Antelope Island, and with some direction to use that on wildlife on the island. Now this allows us to expand the MOU and do it more similar to how we do other conservation permits, prioritizing the island and those species. So we always prioritize the island and those and those species. And these are interesting because it's in the rule. It's a special section called like special antelope island conservation permits. In general conservation permits, it's not divided up by the. We do spend it on conservation permit species, habitat, which tends to benefit really everything that uses that habitat. It's not divided up from where it came in from. But Tammy, what I can tell you is there's the southern region, and southern Utah being the largest region and having a disproportionate amount of habitat work gets the lion's share of this money almost every year. Way more than if you went and did an analysis of where conservation permit monies have been spent across the state of Utah over the course of the program. It's in southern Utah. If we divided it up equally, we'd have to take money back from southern Utah. So I don't know that we want to do that.
I would agree with that, and I support that. I think in relationship to that, there's a lot more public land in southern Utah than there is anywhere else. As far as your percentage of public land. So the majority of it is going on public land and not on private land, right?
I think that's a fair assessment. And even saying that, even with the percentage of public land, the truth is Gary and the others are just so active in their projects, and your BLM down there, your federal and state agencies down there are just super active. And they design these big projects that are good, and they've done a lot of work.
And I'm going to put another plug in for agriculture, because most of this has a permittee that's sponsoring the project.
Yeah.
And we love Gary. He's very active. He's done a damn good job on everything. And by the way, Gary, that reseed looks really good out in Miller County.
Tammy, that's a fair point. Like, the whole goal of WRI is to ignore boundaries and work with private landowners and public land permittees and everyone to make everything the best we can. And there's been a lot of sacrifice on the part of both sportsmen to give up these permits, and on the part of public land permittees to rest their place or whatever they need to do to make these projects happen. So, and offer their own time and their own funds.
Yep. They're good projects.
Yep. And it's a lot of work for a lot of folks.
So my comment is I support the added tag or whatever the extra tags going to sportsmen. I think that's exactly where they should go.
Thanks, Tammy.
Yep.
Any other discussion from the RAC, or we could entertain a motion? Don't all jump at once.
Motion to approve is presented.
I just have one thing. Covey, just wanted to say thank you for bringing those dates in line. I appreciate that. I know that came from the Southern RAC.
Went back and forth a couple times on that.
It did.
Tammy makes the motion to accept as presented. Riley seconds it under duress. And all right, we're ready to vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Unanimous. Thank you, Covey.
Thank you, everyone. Sure appreciate it.
Stick around. It's going to get interesting. All right, we're going to go to agenda item number 7. Verlin, question?
How many voted that time?
Do we need to recount?
Just recount. You said 4, right?
Sorry, 4 online
Okay.
and 5 here.
All right. Okay.
Anybody need to change their vote? Okay. All right, agenda item number 7, outfitters, guides, and spotters rule amendments R65772 with Major Chad Bettridge. Welcome to Richfield.
Is this the interesting part, or is that still later to come? Because now you got me worried.
It's all interesting.
Thank you. Happy to be here. My name, as was said, my name is Chad Bettridge. I'm the major over the Division of Law Enforcement Wildlife Section. And And what we're here to talk about tonight is the guides, outfitters, spotters rule. This previous legislative session, there was a bill passed that took the guides and outfitters out of DOPL and put it within the Division of Wildlife. And based on the enforcement aspect of it, the Division of Wildlife asked the Division of Law Enforcement to run the bill through the RAC. So that's what we're here for. A couple of clarifying points prior to questions. In the presentation, I think it was clear, but I just wanted to make sure. Initially, the renewal date was going to be December 31st. In the presentation, we changed that date to be March 31st, just so we didn't have to renew during the hunts. So that's the yearly renewal date for the COR. Secondly, in the application requirements and approval section number 3, as was, I got a call from a Forest Service employee who used to work for the Division of Wildlife. And he mentioned that in section 3, 2D, it states all necessary federal permits to operate on federal land. You have to have those before you apply for your COR. The Forest Service says the exact same thing, so we would come to a deadlock and neither one would be able to apply for either. So we are willing to adjust that, to strike that, to change it, to read. And in fact, the last RAC meeting in the Northern region, there was a motion and he had a pretty good wording. I won't be able to say it word for word of what he said, but it's to ensure that all state and federal regulations are followed, and to ensure that a Forest Service or a federal special use permit is in hand. So the Forest Service can do it first, is what I'm saying. So, lastly, the section 2E talks a lot about workers' compensation insurance, commercial liability insurance, stuff like that. What we've learned through public comments in the RAC is that a lot of the guides and spotters are 1099 contracted employees, which this wouldn't necessarily apply to. We've had a lot of discussion with our AG reps, and he is actually okay if we strike that entirely or tweak it a little bit to just follow the state and federal rules. So those are my clarifying points.
Chad, just to clarify that a bit further, the RACs made motions to clear that up, but are you going to change your recommendation to the Wildlife Board, or should we address that? Your recommendation stands.
So in the central region, I presented it just how I just did, and they voted to approve as presented. So it's the way I'm interpreting that, they're voting to approve that we adjust that line. In the northern region, the Forest Service employee motioned that they accept his wording, which they did. So there's been a couple different motions related to this.
Okay. Bryant, go ahead.
In regards to the 1099 employees, are you guys going to look into that? Because there's been outfitters audited before that were told they cannot do 1099 employees. That makes their guides a subcontractor, and they'd have to have their own liability insurance at that point. That needs to be cleared up so that all these outfitters are doing the same, because I've been an outfitter, I've been a guide. Some outfitters have 1099'd me. When I was an outfitter, I was told by my CPA that we had to run our employees as W-2 employees, because otherwise they would have to have their own insurance. That needs to be cleared up so that they're all on the same page.
And my response to that is I'm not an insurance expert, and our AG rep's not necessarily an insurance expert either. We put it in there for the purpose of protecting the employees one way or another.
And I agree with that. The employee does need to be protected, but you guys do have access to attorneys that can read into the law, make a determination on this. I mean, part of this is you guys wanting 2 years of an outfitter's
records. But what's that for? Is that only for enforcement of wildlife violations? Or is it to say, hey, you're a legitimate outfitter doing things by the book and have everything in line? So that determination needs to be made. And I know we're up against the wall for time this year.
Sure.
And I think by the end of the night, there's going to be some questions asked to where the wildlife board might need to recommend a committee be put together to address all this. A lot of us never knew this was coming. I heard about it, of course, on the RAC, but then as I've talked to Captain Hovengay and another outfitter that sent us all an email, Tyler, and that some of this has been in the works for 2 to 3 years for law enforcement to ask for this. Is that correct?
It's been something we've discussed. We've had conversations, but this is something that well, and generally speaking, prior to this happening, the Division of Law Enforcement, or the DWR Law Enforcement at the time, would receive all the complaints regarding guides and outfitters. They would all come to us, and we had to give them over to DOPL, who have 3 investigators who, they're not sworn individuals. They got overwhelmed immediately. And that was our intent of trying to bring it into the Division of Wildlife, where there's individuals that understand it a little better, there's better relations, different things like that, and that we can better enforce and help the guides and outfitters make a better product.
And I agree with that. I think over time there can be, but who had input on that before it was presented to a legislature to take to law? And I understand maybe some outfitters were contacted, but not all.
Yeah.
How was that decided? Who was contacted?
I wasn't in charge of the contacting. It was done through the legislator. So
Brian, to be clear, this wasn't a bill that we asked for, but we did cooperate with, once we became aware of it, we worked as closely with the legislator that was proposing it as we could, given the tight time frame that you have within the legislative session. But it wasn't a bill that we asked for.
But when I talked to Captain Hovengay today, he told me that he had been working on this for 2 to 3 years.
So he has been drafting some different documents and stuff like that. Yes. So when halfway through the legislative session, when it popped up and they said, hey, what about this? We did have something in place that we were able to.
Don't get me wrong. I think this has some good merit, because there are some bad actors out there.
Mm-hmm.
But this needs to be looked at so that everyone is on a fair playing field, and not just the big outfitters that have 20 clients a year. There might be small outfitters that need to be able to get an SRP, and they already have to fight with land agencies that say, oh, we've got too many outfitters. Well, you're only going to have the same amount of guided hunters on a certain unit every year. Doesn't matter how many outfitters you have. With an SRP, you're still only going to have to process that much paperwork per year. Some of the Forest Service offices all do things differently. Why can't there be one that says, hey, they've met the standard, now they're asking for your permit, they have a hunter, give them a temporary permit. Same with BLM. Every land agency has a different view of how this is supposed to line up, and none of it's same. The outfitters have to pay them percentages of whatever they book. Now the outfitters are going to have to share that with them. They're going to have to share it with you guys. Let's make sure that the outfitters doing their part in their business and in the law enforcement side, if you're going to take it over. And let's get some committee or something together to make these decisions, and not just contacting big, well-known outfitters to get that information. Let's get this out to all the outfitters and the guides, because as guides, we know how different outfitters work also, and whether they're legitimate or whether they want us to do things out of the way, or
sure,
all kinds of things. So.
And hopefully this rule will help enhance that discussion. and give guides and outfitters more say in who works for who and how and stuff like that. So it does give a lot of power to outfitters to say, if the outfitter says, you're a bad apple guide, I don't want you to work for me. This is a very simple way to make that happen. And vice versa. If the outfitter's doing weird things and the guide doesn't want to have anything to do with it, there's an avenue for them to say, hey, there's some bad things going on here, where there's some teeth to the enforcement now.
Right, but let's get a group together and get this ready for next year. This got to go forward now, but
Sure. No,
by next year, let's get
I
the
understand.
changes that need to happen in place. And the money's one of the things that'll have to go through legislation, because it's a big burden on just somebody who guides 1 or 2 hunts a year versus somebody who has 20 or 30. So.
Possibility comment.
Thanks. Kevin, go ahead.
Brian, you're bringing up really good points. So let me make sure that in my notes that I've captured the sentiment here. I've got kind of 2 bullet points. The first issue is that the 1099 employee question needs to be cleared up because different tax experts are have different opinions on that, and people are getting different advice. Is that generally what the
Yeah,
issue is?
I know of outfitters that have been audited on that by workers' comp and unemployment. And the reason they want 1099 outfitters want 1099 employees, they don't have to pay out for unemployment and workers' comp, because
So
as
that
a
whole question of
1099
what
employee,
the-
you become a subcontractor and you should have your own insurance.
Right. So it's around that question of what level of employee are they? Are they a contractor or are they an employee? We need some clarification on that. And then the second one was essentially that the bill needs to continue to be refined over the next few years, because there's it's happening quick and we're not going to get it all right now. Is that capture?
That definitely, I believe, captures it, because this also came, I knew about it when I got my rack packet a month ago.
Okay. I just want, again, I think these are important points, and I want to make
Absolutely.
sure that I'm capturing them
Absolutely.
correctly in my notes.
I appreciate the clarification, Kevin.
Verlin, you got a question?
Yeah, so I guess clear it up for me. Has this bill passed the legislature?
It has, yes.
And so what is it doing here? Just informational? Or?
We have to pass the rule. So there's the rule that creates some definitions, of the rule that puts the application process into place and the renewal into place. There's some prohibited activities, some field requirements, different things like that will be in the rule that aren't. The bill itself gives the board, the wildlife board, the rule making authority over these things that I mentioned.
All right.
Chad, I've got all sorts of questions, and I'll try to stay out of the what ifs, but in your memorandum, you said applications must be renewed by March 31st. I understand they expire March 31st, but I question the must be. What happens if they're delinquent? Can they wait to see if they book a client or have a potential client and then sign up the day before? Like, what does that mean?
So the must, I guess, means, and maybe that was an overstatement. If you renew prior to March 31st, there's going to be a little box that says, I have all these things from the original application. And you click it and that autofills. You don't have to refill all that stuff out. That's the simple part of renewing. If you do it after March 31st, you're going to have to go through that entire application process again.
It'd be treated as a new.
Yes.
Just to be clear, a new and a renew is the same price under
Correct.
the statute, right? There's
Correct.
no application fee.
There is not.
Okay.
Correct. And to clarify, if an outfitter pays one time, a guide pays one time, spotter pays one time, they don't, regardless how many outfitters a guide works for or a spotter works for, they only have to pay that fee one time, not each time they associate with an outfitter. Yes.
As far as the rule goes, a contracted client, must they be in the field with a guide, or could they be with a spotter only?
I don't think it matters. I'm trying to think of all the definitions and through it, and I think you can be, in the bill itself, it defines what a guide is and what a spotter is vaguely. So as long as you're doing spotter related things and not verging into the guide definitions, Sure, absolutely.
Is it fair to say that there's no prohibited activities on a guide or a spotter? The way I read the rule, would you agree with that or disagree?
Just based on how the bill's written, as long as the definition I can,
As far as the levels, yeah. Can a spotter not do something that a guide does?
yeah, and let me just read, just so everybody is on the same page. From the bill, a spotter definition means an individual compensated by a guide or outfitter to locate or monitor the location of protected wildlife on public land. Simple, lots of things can go into that. A guide is an individual who offers or provides guide services on public lands for compensation. And then there's the definition of guide services. So there's more responsibility on the guide than there is on the spotter.
But there's no may not
Correct.
under spotter. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
If a spotter wants to upgrade to become a guide, do they pay the difference or they start over?
That's a good question. Nobody's asked me that. So I think if you were going to go from a spotter to a guide, you'd have to pay the guide as it's written right now. You'd have to pay the guide.
Start over.
Yeah.
Same for guide to outfitter. Is an outfitter in the rule, is an outfitter the only one that can take compensation from a client, or could a guide take compensation from a client? I know we talked about that a little bit before. I said for a Forest Service, they don't care if you're an outfitter or a guide. As long as you're licensed, they'll issue you a permit if you meet all the criteria. But
Yeah.
yeah, we have two definitions.
Yeah. I'm just reading through the bill really quick. Compensation means anything of economic value. This is in the bill, not the rule. This is already that has passed. Is in excess of $100 that is paid, loan, granted, given, donated, or transferred to a guide, outfitter, or spotter for in consideration of service or materials. So in the bill,
So a spotter could take compensation.
and let me see if I'm not remembering anything.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out if everything had to flow through the outfitter or not.
So to be a guide or a spotter, to be a guide, you have to be associated with an outfitter. You have to be a spotter, you have to be associated with a guide. That's in bill as well.
Spotter associated with the outfitter, right? Not under a guide. A spotter won't be able to go under a guide. A spotter has to go under an outfitter, correct?
Let me clarify.
In the future, Austin, I'm going to make you submit your questions up front so that we can, I think, no,
I did.
yeah, but no, to Chad.
We
had
had
a
a conversation.
We had a great conversation earlier today.
I don't remember these questions though, so maybe I was. My understanding.
So I'm reading three, where is it? It said spotters and guides must obtain a certificate of registration for each outfitter they intend to work for.
Yeah. So
So you said that's a one-time fee, but that sounds like you gotta do that for, if you want to work for 3 outfitters.
you have
sounds
to
like
affiliate, but you only have to pay it once.
you
That's
pay
in rule
one
as well.
fee, so
Yes.
it's, okay.
Yes.
got it.
To be clear, Major, you had said that they could go online, in the field, anywhere you have service, and associate yourself with a QR code or some sort of
Yeah.
secret number
Generally,
And get-
sorry.
and get yourself associated with that guide, reprint your COR or re-download it, and it would show every outfitter that you're licensed under.
Yeah, what we would like to have happen is when the application process goes through, the outfitter lists who their guides are going to be. And it's a working process, but that's kind of easier said than done. So yes, especially if you need to swap a guide out in the middle of a hunt, it's not going to be a difficult process. We're in the process of working on a very simple process, potentially an app that you can use. We're just in the process of building that.
An outfitter applies, fills out his application, gets his license. Chances are those guides aren't ponying up the dough right out of the gate.
Yeah.
They're going to wait till further in the season when he says, I'm busy.
Sure.
Can he associate with someone who doesn't even have a license yet? Or is it reversed? The guide associates himself with the outfitter.
Guide has to associate with the outfitter.
Okay.
Yes.
Brian, go ahead.
Do we know what the application process is going to look like? Is it going to be testing like we had to do back in 2010 to 20? And different testing for an outfitter, different testing for a guide, different testing for a spotter? Is it going to go through is there going to be a committee put together to decide on those like there was back then?
As written right now, there is no test related to this.
So anybody can become a guide
Correct.
just by
Filling out the paperwork.
giving the money, basically.
What about an outfit?
Same thing.
Become an outfit. Anyone can apply with no background.
If,
Application.
Chad, do you care to elaborate on application? There is no test. We talked
there's
about
no
that,
test.
right?
There's no test. Don't forget your question.
Riley, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to back up just a moment on job description, if you will. Are we? I just want to make sure the verbiage, the way it's written, it goes from the top down, so that an outfitter can do all the things that a guide can and a spotter can, just not from the bottom up.
Correct.
That's for sure. The verbiage is
Correct.
written that way,
That's
so
written
that
in
they're
there.
not going to be hamstrung if they're doing something that are not described in the bill.
No. An outfitter services, outfitter means an individual who provides outfitting or guide services for compensation to another individual for hunting protected wildlife on public lands. Outfitting or guide services. Outfitting services. And this is the bill. This isn't the rule. Outfitting services means hunting protected wildlife on public lands, providing transportation, cooking, packing, guide services. So it's not the other way around.
Do we have to go with have a spotter? Is that because that's in law, or can we just make it a guide and do away with the spotter completely? I don't see the need for a third. It has to go back through legislature.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yes.
Thank you.
Other questions from the RAC? Chad, has there been any discussion about what documentation further will have to be provided from an outfitter back to you? Or is it produced only upon request? Is it filed?
So and it's stated somewhat in bill as well. I'm just clarifying what's in bill and what's not. At the end of the year, when you do the renewal, there will be a request submitted into that renewal process where the outfitter lists all the guides and spotters that worked for them this last year, their clients, different things like that. So that's part of the renewal process. So that must happen. And then when checked in the field by an officer, the guide needs to have their COR with them that's associated with an outfitter that says this is who I'm working for. Same with a spotter, just so we can clarify who's being compensated in a group on the mountain and who potentially is just there for being buddies.
Okay. Chuck, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm just, so I'm the slow one on this. I've never looked into guides and outfitters. So on section 3, paragraph 3A, guides and spotters must obtain a certificate of registration for each outfitter they intend to work for. And then you jump down to C and it says to operate as a guide or spotter, an applicant must acquire a guide or spotter or certificate of registration from the division using affiliate code. And to me, it sounds like you're saying the same thing twice. And so please explain to me what the difference is.
We might be saying the same thing twice.
I'll be happy if I read that right one. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Russell, did you have one?
Yeah, I've got one question. So you've got your outfitter, your guide, your spotters, and what is there that, well, how do I say this? So with the criteria, if they violate the law, do they lose their privilege to be an outfitter, guide, or spotter?
The wording in the rule says may. So yes, there's a process if an outfitter violates the law and through a hearing and everything like that, it's just like a license suspension it would be the same type of process. The outfitter could be suspended. If the outfitter is suspended, those people that work for the outfitter are also suspended.
But a guide that was
working for one outfitter, but he wasn't part of the
Correct.
reason he could then go associate with another outfitter.
Yes.
Right.
And that's what the investigation would complete. So an entire investigation would have to happen, and we'd have to be able to sit in front of another board, another suspension hearing, and explain all of the facts, ins, ands, whats, and everything like that. And the hearing officer would have to decide whether or not we met the criteria of that person to be suspended or not.
Well, my question is kind of, at times individuals, spotters, trying to get a trophy animal, they'll trespass sometimes on private, sometimes block roads. I've witnessed that personally. So my question is kind of to that. What do we have in law that discourages those type of behaviors from these guys?
Their privileges to be guides and outfitters would be taken away.
Will they be held under a higher standard than the general public for that? Or will the standards be the same laws that are used against the general public for doing the same thing? If
yeah, there's not a different level of law or rule or violation for a guide or for outer. It's all the same.
Wouldn't it make sense that there would be?
It's all written in rule. Trespass law is written in law. I mean, if you trespass and I trespass, it's the same trespass.
Okay.
So,
and did we clear up the language? I watched a couple of other RACs where multiple outfitters could book with one hunter.
No,
is that going to get cleared up?
That's against the law.
Well, I think the language said they could book with more than one outfitter in the original thing. And that way it would be a loophole where they could have someone with money could have 3 outfitters booked.
I have to find
have extra guys out on different units.
That's an outfitter. A person with a tag can only use one outfitter. They can't book 2.
Chad, is that true if the dates are different? I can book, because the way I see this rule is it's coming down to a daily or an instant, a moment of time that you're with 2 people, and that can change tomorrow. It could change to a different guide and a different spotter tomorrow, as long as you're not with 2, correct?
As long as the individuals that are on the landscape, there's only 2 people there being compensated. Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
But what if there was a finite time, and this week I'm with this outfitter and there's 2 people with me, and then that hunt ends, I paid, it's over, and then the next week I start with a new outfitter. We have seasons that go 6 months, in this state. So I'm trying to understand, if I book a mountain lion hunt in September and I go with 2 people and I don't get one, and then I go in January, if I violated the law.
If that's a good question. And I do think that we would be able to say, well, during this hunt, I was utilizing this outfitter, and then we stopped. And then I got another outfitter at a later date. I think that would be, that's understandable. That makes sense. However, I'm still looking for the phrase where it's in here.
Yeah. So Chad, I'm looking at section 5(1)(a) says no more than 2 registered outfitters, guides, and or spotters may be assigned to a client at any given time. So that makes me think that you can have 2 outfitters assigned. You could hire 2 outfitters and be out in the field with them at the exact same time.
Yeah, maybe.
And then for the once in a lifetime, it says no more than 3 registered outfitters. And I felt like the intent was that no more than 2 people.
Correct.
And so anyhow.
I may have just found what I was looking for. Sorry. I'm looking through rules and bills.
You're
at
great.
the same time.
This is a fun one.
Isn't it? I'm having a good old time.
I'll buy you Coke later. So Chad, as the way Chuck read it, at any given time, to me would indicate that as long as there's not an overlap between when you are associated with one outfitter versus the other outfitter, that you could be associated with 2 different ones, as long as it's not both 2 of them at the same time.
If an officer walks into camp and and you got outfitter A and outfitter B that are both been compensated as outfitters. And then you're also using a guide and a spotter and a guide and a spotter under the outfitters. That's against the law.
What if it's a governor's tag though, and they have an outfitter looking down in this part of the state with 2 or 3 people while they're with another outfitter in this part of the state? They get a call as in
That's
go, which came in this email we got from this.
Yeah, and that's
Tyler.
specifically. I have to find it. Keep thinking. I'm going to find this.
We're putting them on the spot.
Chad, you go on. I'll go on to the bill and find those specific references. If you've got other questions we can deal with while I'm looking.
Should we open it up for questions from the public? Or you got one, Riley?
I do. So I'm still a little hung up. I know that there's no use crying over spilt milk, but how in the hell did this can get kicked so far down the road without the public input? What was the who pushed this through? The legislator.
There were lots and lots of discussion with legislatures at lots of different times. Legislatures talking to legislatures. So,
but who brought this to the forefront? Was this Doppel coming to the division? Was this division going to the legislator?
It was 100% legislatures that brought this up.
When you started this meeting, didn't you say that law enforcement took this to the legislatures to try and get the bill to go through?
No, this is legislative. We had documents. We had information that we had been talking about in our own amongst ourselves. And the legislature says, hey, we're going to run this. What have you got?
Well, I appreciate you being down here, and I know that you're in the hot seat, and
it's usually the other.
Well, we do appreciate you, and again, we recognize, especially as the RAC, and I think with the guides and outfitters that are in the room tonight, that this is not you. You're here to represent, and we do understand that. But I think there's a lot of frustration that this has moved so fast, and I mean, it's kind of passed, and now we're all stuck dealing with it and trying to figure it out. So we got all of these big outfitters, small outfitters, all of these guys are now, and we want to know, well, how did this happen? And so that's the question. I mean, we're sitting here as a RAC trying to make a decision and pass now on the rules, and we don't even know how it got here to start with. And I don't know. I'm like Bryant. I didn't know about this until a month ago.
And I mean, on the Division of Wildlife, Division of Law Enforcement side, we have put out posts and stuff like that on social media that says, hey, guides and outfitters has changed and it's moving over and stuff like that. Now, that doesn't necessarily reach everybody at all the different times. But as far as how did it happen, the legislatures, and this is the circumstances we're in right now.
Yeah, I'll say really. I mean, I want to say was it House Bill 87 or something?
149 is where.
Yeah, well, it started as a House bill running on its own, and it failed, right? And it didn't progress, and so it was lumped in with Senate Bill 149, which is what you pulled up, right? And that
I believe it
through
was
legislation.
Ship that brought it forward, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was initially Representative Ship from Cedar City, but it went. There was a lot of legislators that had input. The final Senate bill that was passed was sponsored, and I don't know how important this is. Senator Winterton and Representative Albrecht were, but like I said, there were others that had just as much input on it as they did through the process. So, but that's where it ultimately ended up in Senate Bill 149.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels, Kevin, like there's a lot of things coming at us now that are just all of a sudden on the table and no input's been given.
I agree completely, Brian. I think, and it's not the first time we've dealt with this. This will be a work in progress, and our law enforcement officers will address it as, their first approach. If the way they've dealt with this stuff in the past is any indication, it'll be largely educational in the first part, unless there's something where it's just like, yeah, you knew better, and there's going to be some discretion there, but the discretion will lean towards educating the the guides and outfitters and refining the process over some time. It's going to have to.
I think that's how some of this got brought on the table was guides and outfitters not necessarily getting along with each other and throwing shots back and forth at each other, whatever you want to call it, to where law enforcement had to deal with some of it. They couldn't deal with it. Now they're going to have to. I think it's a good thing. I just wish we had more time to work on it to get it right instead of wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe consider this a really good foundation that we're going to build on.
Yeah, it's gonna be a work in progress, and I think the legislature will be very open to modifications that they become aware of through the process, and we'll be working closely with them. And you're right, it's not a finished product right now, but it's what we have, and we have an obligation to deal with what's in front of us and work on making it better over the next over time.
I do have one more comment on that. It's not always the guides and outfitters either. There are bad actors that are public hunters that want to blame it on guides and outfitters at times.
For sure.
Understood.
And may I ask or hope that there's trust in our law enforcement that understand both of that, and that we try to be as fair as possible. Obviously, people don't always think we're fair, but our attempts are to be as fair across the board and treat everybody the exact same. And if somebody breaks the law, somebody breaks the law.
And I appreciate that, Chad. I do believe that. I hope I didn't come across.
Nope, absolutely not. We're good.
Tammy, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm really familiar with both bills. Like you said, both the Senate and the House bill, neither one of them were going to pass. And so they put them in a pot and stirred them all up and made it big enough that nobody knew what the hell was going on. And then they passed it. So it was one of them big old clustered bills that super confusing, and I expect somebody else to clean it up and
here we are.
So, and here we are.
Okay, a couple more questions, right?
Yes.
Yeah. These will be easier, Chad.
Good, because I need a drink of water.
Do you feel like the process that you have in place for the application process itself for the guides and outfitters is going to be fairly seamless compared to what they're used to with Doppel?
So I have never applied for Doppel, but yes, our goal is to make it as simple as absolutely possible. It's going to be
and that's
online.
that's already set up. It's
We
in
have
works,
so in some ways we are in the same boat as everybody else, because we hired a person to run this program a week ago. And it's so it will be.
And now that's actually the next question is, do we have the manpower set up? Do we have the team set up for this? I mean, obviously this is going to be a new
Absolutely.
division in the division.
Brian, I did find the answer to your question about. So I'm in the bill. I'm in 1204. This is the section 6, down under 4. Oh, now I lost it again.
It moves.
But it says that a person cannot simultaneously hire more than one guide to the person who retains a guide or out. So they can only hire a guide or outfitter if they're not retaining another one simultaneously for taking the same species and sex of protected wildlife. So you could not have an outfitter that's with you in one place and then somebody else looking down on a different unit, like if you had the governor's tag.
And I appreciate that. That was brought.
That's
to us
in the
an
bill.
email
So that's section 6. What was the reference? Thank you. Yes.
Now, Chad, is it our duty or your duty to write and rule everything that was in that code? And if you feel like you missed something in the rule, isn't that where we're supposed to add that?
So the bill gave us certain rule. It's kind of like the one that's going to come up with Chelsea. There's things that we can talk about, and there's things that already exist that they're in the bill. And those things are, again, some definitions, the application process, renewal process. These are what the bill gave the board rule authority over to create. And then field requirements, prohibited activities. There is a statement in the rule, or excuse me, in the bill that the wildlife board may adjust the fee up or down through the process too. So
Okay.
we're saying, let's go with what we got for a minute.
All right. Questions from the public, clarifying questions. And fill out a comment
Don't
card.
everybody stand up at once.
Make sure you get us a comment card so we get time. But if you have a question, come on up. Just questions right now. We'll do comments after.
I'm Rodney Anderson. Yeah, I'm glad I waited till the end of this, like I put on my green card, so stuff was answered, much of it. Our guides and outfitters on CWMU is going to be required to be licensed, outfitted, and and insured. Likely they are because they're private, but yes, that's one of my questions. Part of my stuff is there a site somewhere at this time that a person, whether a new person that wants to be a guide or a renewing guide under this new deal, can look, see, and find this wording and what we're talking about here tonight? I've looked around and doesn't mean there's not one out there though.
So if you want to find the bill,
I
have you looked it through the bill?
Yes.
Okay, you found that.
We're working on the rule, so eventually, yes, it will be.
So after this process, when it's defined, that we'll have stuff posted on our website, but it's other than the RAC packet, that's what's the information is right now that's available.
Okay, I'll remember something else when I get. Anyhow, for what it's worth, I'd like to invite the CWMU guides, outfitters, and spotters to get to pay also. To just make it fair and, oh, that was a statement, sorry.
We'll get you back, Rod. Thank you. Chad, would you like to answer his first question about
The first
CWMUs?
question, this bill and rule is specific to public grounds. So guides and outfitters and spotters that are conducting those activities on public is what this is regarding. Private property is a different circumstance.
That rule only goes to the property owner and not to even though it's a public commodity that they're hunting on that in the animal.
I hope that's a statement, not a question.
I'm asking you.
Hey, any other questions from the public?
So the bill, I'll answer that. The bill is specific to where, not what.
Yeah. It's very specific to public land.
Question, Dave? We can't hear you if you're not on a microphone, but appreciate it.
You said specifically you were not going to stand up.
Well,
I heard.
I just want to clarify something because I heard something. So David Roscoe, did I hear it correctly when you said that guides can solicit work and apply for SRP permits, or is it just the outfitters that can apply for SRPs and solicit work?
So
meaning booking a client.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that are going to be defined. A guide has to work for an outfitter. And the outfitter is an individual who provides outfitting or guide services for compensation. A guide is somebody who provides guide services. So I think the outfitting is the one who books the client, not the guide. And that's the bill. That's a definition in the bill, not necessarily the rule.
I have one more.
And just to clarify, the reason we need you to go to the mic is, so I've got a couple ladies in my office that will be essentially transcribing this whole thing so that the wildlife board knows everything that was said here. And if you're not in the mic, they're not going to be able to hear it and they're not going to be able to get it on the record. So that's why we need that.
Okay. So the other question was in referring to the two outfitters being booked. So Bryant's an outfitter, I'm an outfitter, but we have a shared client. It's okay for me and him to be with that client in the field as long as we don't have any guides or spotters, because that would accommodate the two compensated individuals, but we're both outfitters with outfitters licenses. Am I reading that, or did I hear that correctly?
So
Can I work with another outfitter, being an outfitter myself, with one shared client?
and as long as, it's a good question.
Okay.
Let's see if we can work through that. So an outfitter, again, I'm just gonna read some definitions. An outfitter, as defined in the bill, is an individual who provides outfitting or guide services. So an outfitter can act as a guide under definition. So if you're an outfitter and you're an outfitter, one of you's got to be a guide, I guess. So, oh, bless you. You're a good person.
But yeah, they could both be in the field at the same time, both being compensated, both acting as guides.
As long as they don't violate what Kevin read just a minute ago, as far as
Simultaneously, two people
correct.
assigned.
So if the client, if the hunter has hired both outfitters to hunt the same species, the same sex, that's exactly what Kevin said can't
Yeah,
happen.
let me find that again.
Let's reread that again. Correct. Correct. Yeah. And because it says in the rule, the outfitter can act as a guide, and you paid a more fee, I don't think we would.
That outfitter,
Correct.
no two different contracts. There could only be one contract, and that other outfitter would have to act as a guide under the original outfitter's
correct.
contract, correct?
Correct.
Brian,
So I think this part that I read earlier would preclude two guides or two outfitters. It's all going to come under one outfitter, one guide, because they cannot simultaneously. Where did it go again? Okay, they cannot simultaneously use another guide or outfitter to assist with hunting the same species and the same sex of protected wildlife. So you couldn't have, the way I read that, you could not have two guides that are separately under separate licenses, or two outfitters under separate licenses. It's an outfitter with his guides and his spotters.
So correct. If this outfitter hired you as a guide, even though you're an outfitter, that would work.
Right. Right. But you couldn't both be acting as outfitters.
Correct. Correct.
Whatever that means.
but the other way you could read that as well is say you can't have two guides.
Right. Yeah. You have to have
One has to act as a spotter.
Yeah. One has. Yeah. That's the way I read it too. So whether that's the intent or not, that's the way I'm reading it.
Again, we're reading bills, and there's those.
We're making Bryant's point that it's going to be a work in progress.
Yeah.
And I think we can commit as a division, and I'll speak for DLE here, Chad, both Division of Wildlife and DLE, to work through the process it's going to take to get it where it needs to be in the end. So,
and I will reiterate that our whole goal is to work with all of you, if you're all guides and outfitters, which I think you all are, to make this as fair and as and enforceable as possible. I mean, we're not trying to catch anybody doing stupid things.
Just to be clear to what Bryant was saying, the way I read it, the word contract or doesn't exist in the rule. Like it's all based around compensation. And I don't know if
So in
you intend
in
to define
rule-
contract or agreement, but
in rule, you have to get the COR. So an outfitter applies for a COR with the Division of Wildlife. They're given a number, a COR number. They will give that COR number to, you're the outfitter, you give it to your guide. He's now going to use that COR to affiliate with this outfitter.
Mhm.
But he can also affiliate with you as another outfitter, just as long as I mean, we don't want to limit the number of people he can work for, but that COR is the contract.
sorry, I was referring to a client contract.
Oh.
The word client contract and agreement doesn't exist. It's all just compensation.
Mhm.
Could be cash, could be an agreement. How does a contract end? When does it start? Those are all things we have to think about as we go forward. But All right, should we summarize public comment online and then we're going to get to public comment here in the room? Oh, question. Go ahead.
You can't have my water.
I'm Shane Bradbury. We're kind of a small outfitter in Wayne County, but for one, my dad and I both hold an outfitter's license. So is that, I mean, can we work and do?
Are you together?
It's one.
Are
one
you
company.
together as you're an entity, right? One entity. So what the application process, I read this earlier. You guys just keep getting, this is what, application to operate as an outfitter must contain the name of the applicant and if the applicant is an entity. So you and your dad, if you're, one of you has to become the outfitter.
Which that's the way it is
for us.
But just because I hold the license that says outfitter, I mean, it's not going to.
So what you're going to do is when you apply for the division or when you apply for the COR, you're going to type in your name.
Okay.
And then you're going to type in the business.
Okay.
And then
Very
and that's going to be through that process.
Sure. And then I have another, on the one spot, it says when you're out in the field, you have to have like the client's name, and all that list with the QR stuff. So what about last minute? Like I literally got a call yesterday. I'm taking a guy tomorrow on a bear hunt. So what, I mean, how's that possible? Do I say, sorry, can't do it? Do you?
No.
Is there going to be a place I can go on the computer and say,
Absolutely.
hey, I've changed? All of a sudden I got to
Yes.
be able to adjust it so that if I get in the field, I'm not.
Are you saying as the outfitter that you all of a sudden one day don't have a client, the next day you do?
Yeah.
But you already have your,
Without any plan or anything.
but you've already applied and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so I've got all my guides on there, everything else, but it's just a new client.
Yeah. That as long as, so if your guides and this is something that we're going to have to maybe clarify a little bit down the road to make it a little easier. But if you and your guides are out in the field and you get checked by an officer and you say, this is your guide says, I work with outfitter, whatever your company is, and this is my client, and your client has the proper permit and you have a permit or the COR and the guide has a COR, the spotter has a COR, we're good to go.
Yeah, the application process won't identify the clients, just the guides,
Oh,
just
it
the
says
outfit.
on the thing, you must.
And there will be,
represent the client,
Yeah.
where was it? Anyways.
so there will be and it's going to
So-
be a very simple, but you can go
Okay.
online, you can do it, knock it out really quick. Yes, that's the whole plan.
Question? Go ahead, Ty.
Taylor Albrecht. So the law takes effect July 1st, right? So the process that you guys have set up, what is that process and how long do you think it's going to take for somebody to go through the process to be either approved or denied?
So there's a process that we go through to check to see if you meet this criteria, right? That takes just a few minutes. So it's not going to be an extended process. You won't have to wait a week or anything like that. I think it'll be potentially same day or within the next day or something like that. Again, we're building that, but it's not going to be an extended period of time.
Okay. So on that, if you are denied, will you have time to argue that from your July 1st deadline of when you got to, or opening, when you got to apply? Some hunts start August 1st.
Mhm.
So say you're denied and for whatever reason, are you going to have time to argue that, get approved? And then now as an outfitter, you've got to hurry and get all your guides license as well. Take, for example, the Sportsman's Buffalo starts August 1st.
Mhm.
And you've already booked that because last year that Austin, when does the draw results come out for that? Is it December? And so now we've already booked that and taken compensation. And here it is now March and this law is proposed. And there's been a lot of questions asked right here that we don't have answers to.
I've
So what's
answered
that?
every one of them.
No, you've done good. But I guess, is there gonna be time from July to August 1? I mean, we're a small group right here. How many outfitters is there in the state? And how are you guys gonna handle that process to get all the outfitters moved through and then the guides and then attach those guides to that outfitter?
Yeah. So I was just reading through on the rule here. It does talk about in reviewing the application, the division shall consider completeness, accuracy, conviction of plea to no contest of a Title 23, which is the wildlife code. Any license suspension action that has been reciprocated pursuant to the interstate wildlife compactors. If you've done something bad in another state and you're suspended there, and that would be coming into play. Conviction of plea of no contest or plea of held in abeyance of a criminal moral turpitude, which is a law phrase that means kind of includes fraud, theft, crimes of that nature. That could be, these are things that should be considered. A denial of the application for certificate of registration is the final agency action, and the applicant may appeal the denial by filing a request for agency action under the division, with the division under Rule 657-2. So there's a process in place for that appeal. That's not necessarily an immediate next day you get to decide what the rule is. So I understand what the, generally speaking, if you don't have any of those issues, the approval is going to be really simple. If there's things that may come into play there, then we'll have to talk about something else. So.
Thanks, Chad. Kevin, do you want to speak to the process and then share the public comment online?
Yeah, this has seemed kind of chaotic and a little ugly.
Nah, this is good.
But this is what this process is about. And I'd much rather, I appreciate people coming and asking the questions. Way better to have it in this venue. And we're not getting them all out tonight. This is a process that's going to continue, but it's better to do it now in here than have a judge involved in somebody's license on the line and those sorts of things. And so it's going to have to be a work in progress over time. And we're committed to doing that. And we're going to have to work with the legislature as part of that. But yeah, let's ask all these questions now rather than when there's a violation and somebody's COR and livelihoods on the line. Way better now than later. So I guess what I'm trying to say is thanks.
I 100% agree. This has been my first RAC, and I'm never doing it again. but it is a really great process. So.
Question? Yeah, go ahead.
So you say that anyone can apply for a license, an outfitter or a guide or a spotter, I guess. Now you have to apply for that too.
So yes.
So when I applied for my outfitter's license, I did it because my dad was in bad health. I didn't know how long, and I wanted to get my outfitters. So because it's a lot harder to get if you don't know a lot of, you know what I mean? You have to do, had to do hours. I had to do checklists. I mean, it was a big test. I mean, so like, then they're the ones responsible for everything. So is there any more, I guess, stricter guidelines to get an outfitter license than there is a guide or a spotter? I mean, I can see a spotter obtaining a license, just being a kid or whatever he wants, as long as an outfitter will vouch. But as far as a outfitter goes, I mean, I kind of think you're asking for trouble, because you're going to get a 18-year-old kid or 16 that doesn't know anything about anything and get in trouble or cause something bad, I mean, is there a stipulation? Does our existing outfitters licenses carry over at all? Is there any grandfathering? Is there any, is there any standards you're going to hold outfitters different?
And this has come up numerous times in conversations with just guides and outfitters, phone calls, different things like that. As it stands right now, and as the rule states, an applicant to operate as an outfitter must contain like the name, the applicant of the entity, proof of registration with Utah business entities and the Department of Commerce, a brief description of the services that will be provided, and you have to have a hunting, fishing, or combination license relevant to the services being provided. That's the stipulations to be an outfitter. So
So what
now
is it to be a guide?
you have
Same
to
thing?
affiliate with an outfitter.
So I'd have to basically sign for a guide or a spotter.
So what you would, if you're going to, if
Vouch
you're the
for it,
outfitter, yeah. That's it. And if somebody comes to you and is like, hey, I want to be your guide, and you're worried about them, don't sign them. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be, through this committee that we've talked about potentially coming up, that there's no potential about it, that's coming, that could adjust through another RAC. And there might be a test. There might be more stipulations involved, but right now that's what the rule states.
For your benefit to screen a little bit.
And I will actually say it's more for your benefit to screen the people that are going to work for you, because we can just, we take people to jail and we're okay with it. So, you know what I'm saying? And that was sort of flippant, but I'm just saying it is more for your benefit as a business to hire good people.
Chad, are you saying when a guide goes on and it's not going to allow him to complete the application without having the secret number, that's
Correct.
the outfitter's number? Is that a secret number? Or is it
It's just a
generic
COR number that the outfitter has to give to that guide.
Okay.
So it's
guide.
correct. You don't have to have a business license
To be a guide.
Correct. Correct.
It said if. It did say if, when you and I talked about that earlier, it said if it's an entity.
If it's an entity.
An outfitter can just be a person.
It can just be a person, as long as they have all these other things.
Okay. Let's summarize some public comment, because we got some comments ready to go here. I know it.
I will say we only have one comment card. So if you want
Pass them up.
to make a comment other than just the questions, let's get those up. You know, we had 6 people that expressed opinions on this online. In general, there was agreement that conceptually people were in favor of this process, with some uneasiness of questions that still need to be answered. And there was some concern expressed about how it will impact smaller guiding and outfitting operations. That the sentiment from a couple of people was that it seemed to be focused on larger operations, and there's lots of maybe more questions associated with a smaller guide and outfitter. That was one of the probably the main sentiment that was expressed. So
How many comments was that total?
there was only 6 comments. 3 of them strongly agreed, and 2 of them strongly disagreed, and 1 somewhat agreed. So in general, there was more in agreement than not.
Okay. All right, we're going to open it to public comment. He said I only have 2 comment cards, but there may be some more. We'll have you come up to the mic and read your comments or share them with us. My request for your comments, as a RAC, if there's any specifics that we can put into a motion to carry to the Wildlife Board, it would help us. I think we've got a pretty good feeling of the sentiment, and your questions help us get some specifics that we could put down, get on the record, put on paper, and take to the Wildlife Board if there's any way to fix this in the short term, because it's coming July 1st. So make it as good as we can in the short term. First, we'll have Tyler Miller from Utah Outfitter Guide Association.
Yeah, so anyway, I am Tyler Miller. I am an outfitter, also Wild Eyes Outfitters out of Manti. Special use permits on south end of the Wasatch, Manti, and then here on the Fish Lake. So yeah, a lot of you have been surprised, overwhelmed, wondered where this came from, what happened, how did they get here, and we've danced around it pretty nicely tonight. But we've heard that it didn't come from DWR, right? And we've heard that it didn't come from Doppel. So we've heard that it came from back end way through a legislator and introduced down. And you know, down and then through the process and then released, kind of, it feels like it's skidded under the table. And there's been plenty of input from, as we mentioned before, select outfitters into implementation of this rule. So there's your straightforward, say it as it is, right? We got to get a hold of that. We got to get, so in the process of this whole thing, and we've all kind of been stunned by it somewhat, and online or whatever, through years, over the last 5 years that I'm aware of, but there's been 5 initiatives to create a professional association for guides and outfitters, okay, that sets guidelines, that sets standards, that sets the ethics, that monitors our own, so that essentially we know our field, we know the rules. And what you're not hearing tonight and why there's so much confusion is there's not communication about a special use permit. There's not the understanding about a special use permit. All the outfitters know it. They all know what we're talking. I know what I'm talking about here. But see, that is the critical point. And what we're doing by introducing this ability for both now with the DWR, we're trying to work through this. We're trying to say that, 2 outfitters can come and work together. Well, that already exists with the Forest Service. You just go to another outfitter and you sub under their special use permit. So we're doing it, it's a double duty deal. And I do want to I want to extend and really, say that I appreciate the fact that the U.S. Forest Service and the DWR, there was a big meeting this week down here, on the Fish Lake. And that was impressive. At least it was impressive in the fact that the feds and the state got together and talked. Because, and I just say that with respect, and I say it out of thanks, because literally a special use permit is 20 pages long, and it's all legal jargon. Read through one and try to figure it out. It takes a bachelor's degree pretty much, to read it, to understand it line by line, and about 5 years of studying it. And so I guess the issue that I want to address, all right, the main issue that I want to address, and I've spoke a fair amount with Officer Hobengate. Actually, before I jump to that, I want to speak to what I've created as far as this. So it's a legally created nonprofit association. It's a professional trade association, just like it's what's called a 503c6. So same category as SFW, Mule Deer, all of them. Same category as a nonprofit, an IRS classification, okay? And we're entitled to those same benefits and things that exist within that classification. Okay, and I hope all outfitters will join me in this fact, and guides. I am very excited and optimistic about working with the DWR in creating the professional structure for outfitters and guides throughout the state, so that we set the standards, so we set the ethics, so that we have our professional administrative board for the field that we know. And hopefully, I don't know of an outfitter that I'm real familiar with that's real happy about the fact that they got your professional license was taken away from you in 2020, and you hardly even knew about it. And if you understood what your professional license, a trade profession, that's bachelor's degree, or at least an associate's. Hey, that is a big deal. And you don't have that anymore. You have a slip of paper that can get torn up and just, I minimized the last statement that I said, but you know, a professional license is a significant thing. And we mentioned like these barriers to entry into the field, okay? A lot of this came from the era of when we did do the checklist thing of skills, all right? We did the test. Okay, we did these steps. It was not easy. Okay, and the problem now with, I call a guy, you know, one night because I heard from a client, and I heard about this great big buck over on this unit, and I put everything together, and oh wow, I just heard about a guide over there. If you understand how quickly that can be thrown together and how misconstrued and how illegal things come together, that is it. Right there. Is because it is so simplified. And there are actors in the game that want it simple. We don't need simple, we need a professional. And so my computer just went dead on me, but the main thing that I want to identify, there is problems. I need water too, but with the language, it does still say you can use, so under a limited entry permit, or let's say a general season, you can use, it still does say that, so for limited entry, you can use 2 outfitters, guides, or spotters. So you're talking about 2 outfitters with special use permits, you know, and you put those 2 guys together, and if you're talking about a sportsman's tag, now immediately those outfitters have access to the entire state to find the biggest buck or the biggest bull out there and go slam him. Do you understand the problem with that? And the ethics and the fair chase? It's abandoned. I mean, you know, that needs to be removed. Somehow, 2 outfitters, you know, if they're not under the business, thank you.
Thanks, Morgan.
Yeah, thanks a lot. If they're not under a business together, like I can see what, I'm sorry, I don't know what individual's name. I can see what he said before about if, you know, a father and son are in the same business, but that is also covered under a business entity. When we register as a business or a outfitter, we had to provide DOPL with our Utah business entity number. In fact, whenever we signed off and licensed the guide, we had to provide DOPL with our Utah business entity number. Okay, so if we're under the same business, we're already together anyway. So that's okay. That's already covered there.
Tyler, we're gonna have you wrap it up. You've sent us a lot of really good comments. I sure appreciate this.
Okay.
Is there any closing statement you'd like to share with us?
That's the biggest issue that I want to get addressed. I think that's the main one that I really, if you were to consider a motion, you got to get rid of 2 outfitters, a client being able to hire 2 outfitters and go work the entire state to find the biggest and baddest. I got a big issue with that one.
Okay. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate your emails you sent us as well and the hard work you've been putting into researching this.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Next up, Dave Roscoe.
I wasn't going to comment, I promise. But there was something brought up at the beginning of the meeting and when Bryant was talking to you about 1099 and W-2 employees. So I went through the process both ways. I spent a lot of money with a lawyer figuring out what I can and can't do. And in the last few years, I've finited my business to where all my guides are subcontracted labor. So my comments to the RAC is that there's some verbiage put in there because Utah business law, I don't know another business that is dictated by an entity that says you have to have W-2s, you have to have 1099s. So my comment to the RAC is that we put something in writing that it's neither one or the other, that the business owner still can conduct his business how he wants to. If he wants to have subcontracted laborers, he can. If he wants to have W-2 guys, if you're a small outfitter and you only have 1 or 2 guys that are full-time year-round employees and you want to W-2 them, great. But my business is different, and I've orchestrated it to the fact where it financially benefits my guides more. It financially benefits the business more. And we are in compliance on all levels with liability insurance, with workman comp, whether they carry it on their own or they get the waiver. We've done it to where everybody makes as much money as they can, the business saves as much money as they can, and it operates like a well-oiled machine legally. So after that comment, I just want to present to the RAC that you guys put something in writing that doesn't say we have to do it one way or the other as outfitters, that we can choose how we conduct our business with our employees. That's all I wanted to say about it.
Dave, can I ask you a question while you're there? The rule line E says workers' comp and commercial liability insurance, but under your special use permit, you're going to have that some level of liability insurance anyway. Should that even be covered in the rule, in your opinion?
So with the SRP, it's a whole different entity. The insurance on the SRP is you're insuring the government. You're not insuring your business, your employees, or anything. That insurance I carry from my SRPs is for the federal government. It's for the Department of Interior. So if I hire an outfitter that's John Doe Outfitting, by Utah law, he has to carry his liability insurance. That's law. And he either has to carry workman's comp for himself, but if he's a self-proprietor, if he can exempt himself. So what I require personally right now is that my guides supply me with their liability insurance, supply me with either their workman's comp insurance policy or the waiver, either one. But I don't let them go in the field without a hunter until I have my own checklist, because I know the laws. I've spent a lot of money knowing what I can and can't do and how I can run this business. And it's cost me money. I changed it because I got audited, and then I found out the hard way. There's not a rule book in Utah law that says, if you're an outfitter, you do it like this. So you kind of learn things the hard way. So if they don't supply those things, they don't take a hunter for me, because the Utah law, not DOPL, not the DNR, nobody like that. The Utah law says to run a business, you have to have certain criteria. And that's just one of them in the guiding and outfitting. So if they don't have it, they don't take a hunter. So and so I'm just hopeful that when this comes around to the wildlife board, that we have the decision as the outfitter, how we want to run our business. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
So
Chad, go ahead.
Currently, as we stand right now, East states that you're going to say an attestation that workers' compensation insurance and commercial liability insurance to cover employees and clients has been obtained.
Yes.
That might be what you want as it's currently written.
That's exactly why I run my business like I do, because an attorney told me they have to have workman's comp, their own, or a waiver, when they have to provide liability.
And all that's stating is there's a checklist that says, yes, I'm doing that.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. So the only thing that made me nervous was the comment earlier. Like I kind of felt like, hey, we're going to decide if you have to have W-2 employees or 1099. And I just wanted to squash that really quick. So I didn't.
Well, Dave, I think that needs to come from a legal expert with them, how that is, and maybe the outfitter needs to let the guide know if he signs this and he don't have insurance, that he could be liable for anything that happens to that client, because your insurance ain't going to take care of him.
No, absolutely not. And I mean, not to just show how I run business and compare it to everybody else, but I have contracts with every single one of my subcontracted guides too, that state certain criteria along the lines of that, so that to protect me, to protect them, but just to know that they can't do this without this, because if they didn't have liability.
Because you and me both know that there's going to be a guide that wants to guide one hunt a year, and he's not going to go look into the legalities of, hey, Dave's going to pay me this much, he's going to give me a 1099, but if I wreck with that guy, all of a sudden my house is gone.
Sure.
Because I didn't go get insurance and I just signed the paper Dave wanted me to sign.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to state is, like, me personally, I make sure that they provide that or they don't go in the hills, because I don't want their lives to be ruined over a week of hunting deer down south. I mean, we want to make sure we're doing things legally and correctly. The only reason I got up here was because I was nervous that we were going to get shoved one way or the other.
I'm pretty comfortable saying that we're going to dictate as little as we can, and we're going to leave it on the guides and the outfitters to make sure their business is covered, and they've talked with their own legal representation and they're comfortable with that. And that's going to be on you guys. I could be wrong, but based on how we operate, that I would be shocked if that's not the way it is.
And to clarify, the reason that it came up in my point of clarification at the beginning was because a lot of public comment
Sure.
was regarding that. And my statement was that's a statement in the rule that we're willing to work with. But I also think that the statement that is currently there is doing exactly what you want it to do.
It is. That's, yeah.
So,
all right, thank you.
Chad, just to clarify though, if we're saying maybe we should leave something about E in there, it says that it already has to be obtained before application.
And-
You would
and-
have to attest that you have it
has been obtained. It does say that.
before
yes.
you submit the application, not will get it.
And
or
that could be the tweak.
Okay.
So, but something to, yeah, and that's the part that I was saying, we're not the experts on this. More people are. We just want to make sure people are covered is really what
Kind
we
of.
want to have.
Okay, one more public comment. Rod Anderson.
Thanks, but some of these other people went through it.
It's covered. Okay. Thank you. Any other public comment? All right, we'll close public comment and go to RAC discussion. Who wants to start?
I'll start, Austin.
Brian.
Well, I think when we go with the motion, we're going to have to go with what's presented and pass it as presented. But I think we have room in this to recommend to the division to form a committee, or have the wildlife recommend to the division to form a committee that gets together and clarifies all these things, because it can't be done tonight. And they work with multiple outfitters, guides. The outfitters have the biggest one. They had 4 outfitters, and then it just got taken away in 2020 is my understanding, but I've still had to pay my $50 to keep my license current. And now I'm going to have to pay $250 a year. That's the other thing that they need to look at. And when I talked to Captain Hobengay, he said that we put that in there to pay for the enforcement of this. And that is what he told me today on the phone. And I understand it costs money to enforce these things and that, but we will be the only business entity in this state that's paying this every year. A general contractor is only going to pay every 3 years through DOPL a $50, $150 renewal fee. As long as they get their 6 hours of continuing education, they keep their B100 license. I have a general contracting license. So I think this is unfairly being the money side of it put on to guides and outfitters. Now, the big outfitters, they're going to be able to handle it. The little outfitter that takes 1 or 2, he's going to have to charge a lot more. So it's being passed on to the public. Back in 2010, before that, all we had to have was SRPs and the proper use permits. And in 2010, we were told we had to get licensure. At the same time, they changed us from providing a service, which is still what we provide as a service. I'll argue that to the end, and said we're entertainment, so that they could collect state sales tax from the hunter when he books a hunt. We're providing knowledge of the mountain, knowledge of the animals, knowledge of the ways in, out, taking care of the game. It is a service. It is not entertainment. And maybe there's an option now where they're changing this to get that out, because there's other service-oriented businesses that don't have to have the client pay sales tax to the state, yet we do. We had to add that in back then and go through the process, the testing that was all been talked about, get our licenses, and then we renewed every 3 years. We just had to sign an affidavit and renew as long as we didn't have anything change. Well, like I say, and apparently in 2020 that got taken away. None of us knew it because we still had to renew. I just renewed after 2020. And so I think this has some good points. There's definitely been some bad actors out there, both public and guides and outfitters, and they need to be dealt with accordingly. They shouldn't be doing this business if they can't get along with each other and with the public. And that's all got to be worked out, how that's going to be handled. I do think that as guides and outfitters, we do need to be held to a higher standard in that process than the public. So maybe others won't agree with me on that, but that's what I have to say. And I'll probably abstain from the vote because I am a current guide and outfitter. So
Thanks, Brian. Chuck?
Yeah, I was asked by the Forest Service to propose the amendment. I think it's the same amendment that Avery Cook proposed, which says not require federal permits at the application process for the state. So somebody gets to go first. Otherwise, like you said, we would require it first and you'd require it first and nobody would get a permit. So the way he said it, application material, the state guiding license, but to require applicable permits to be obtained from the relevant land management agency, and that guides carry a copy of the federal permit or the special use permit while operating in the field. So that would allow them to get the state license and then get a special use permit. They can go in that order. Because currently the way they've done it, they require the state license before they get their special use permit. At least that's what our SUP guy said. So. And I haven't read through one of those yet. 20 pages.
Thanks, Chuck. Other comments, Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe this is probably my last RAC meeting. Is that right, Kevin?
Man, I hope so.
Ouch.
Sorry.
Love you too. I've thanks, Vernon. I want to talk a little bit about the legislation process of this whole thing and why this meeting is so important. This is the second time in as many years that we have seen something get thrown through past the division, past the RACs, that really didn't ever come to us in the first place. And that's one of the reasons why this process is so important. We say that over and over again. And this is when I first started on the RAC, I came into it because I have a passion for the outdoors. I was born into it. I love it. This is a renewable resource. I've got kids. I'm going to have grandkids. And what a blessing it is to be able to come to a place like this and to be able to voice our concerns when we have differences of opinions, whether we're sportsmen or we're stockmen or ag guys or houndsmen. We can come and we can try to find a balance. And not everybody's going to be happy all the time, but at least it goes through the process. The public gets to comment. We get to have a say, so to speak. And it's one of the only venues we get to do that. It's frustrating for me. And Mr. Shipp, I hope you're listening to this because I'm really frustrated with our legislation right now that this got pushed through without going through what I feel is the proper channels. And I would say to anybody who's listening and everybody here that's present to write a letter. The only way that this is going to stop and the reason that this is so important is because without these committees, without the advisory councils, without the wildlife board, it is just special interest groups or deep pockets that get anything passed through whatever they want. That can't happen. That's gonna hurt us individually. It's gonna hurt our wildlife. It's gonna hurt the division. And I'm opposed to that. And I'm very disappointed at how this one played out. I appreciate so much the efforts that you're putting in and being able to work with us. Thank you so much for that. I do have some concerns. I know we have to move forward with it, with what we've already been dealt. They've handed it to us and said, all right, now let's try to fix it. I think that the vetting process is going to have to be pretty stringent. You're going from one, from Doppel now over to the division. And you may have to be pretty stringent when you do whatever. I don't know what kind of background checks you're going to do or whatever the qualifications are, but as has been stated, the outfitting and guide community is fairly small, and there are those that may not qualify right currently under Doppel that might sneak through if there's not a joint. Again, I don't know how you're going to vet that, but I would hope that doesn't happen, or you're going to probably hear some uproar from other guides and outfitters if it does. I do feel like the fees are disproportionate compared to Doppel. I think that needs to be looked at. I understand that the money's got to come from somewhere, but I think passing all of that on to the guides and outfitters, everybody's, it's equal isn't always fair. And I think that needs to be looked at. Maybe doing something like do fees, post later on rather than upfront, so that you can, the more you guide, the more you pay. The less you guide, the less you pay. I think that there's got to be a lot of verbiage tweaks, and I know that you're willing to look at that. And I would also suggest that over the course of the next few racks, that not necessarily as an action item, but more informational, to get that back out, to look at that verbiage so that we can reintroduce it to it, look at the changes that we need to make as often as we can. And again, I know you guys are under a timeline, and I appreciate that, but I think that it does need to go back through the process, whether it's through a committee has been suggested. I don't know that it matters. I don't have a huge opinion on that part of it, but it does need to come back through the process so that we can make sure that some of those little tweaks and stuff happen. Again, I appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate all of you guys for being here tonight and voicing your opinions. This is why it's so important. When I first started, I think we had a lot more folks that were coming to the RAC meetings. I feel like we've been discredited a little bit, maybe because some of the decisions or the things that went through the wildlife board the last few years. I would encourage you to talk to your neighbors and your friends, your sportsmen, your other ag guys. Attend these meetings. Watch the go to the division website, watch those, be informed, because that's where these decisions are going to be made. And it's the squeaky wheel. And so if you guys have a voice, bring it. And as Kevin said earlier, this is where it needs to happen, not out in the coffee shops and everywhere else, because that doesn't do anything. This is where it has to happen. So again, thank you to the division. Thank you to the outfitters and guides tonight.
Verlin, go ahead.
I'm with Riley 100%. Everything he said, even including last RAC meeting. So
I'll miss you, Verland.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. But yeah, it's frustrating to have this go through the legislation and then throw it in our laps to figure it out. It shouldn't work that way. It should go from the bottom up. But anyway, yeah, I agree with Riley, and I don't know much about the outfitter and the guide deal. I own two companies. I pay $15 a year to Dopplo, and then quite a bit more for a veterinary license and that kind of stuff. But I think those fees are out of line, and if the legislature is going to make this happen, they ought to fund it too, make it so that it don't break these guys. So even, I mean, the small guys should have as much right as the big guys to make a living and to be an outfitter or a guide.
Thanks, Verlin. Other comments?
One last one. Just short,
let's hear it.
And it's not going to necessarily make friends, but Riley did say something about conservation and special interest groups. And this is the one item tonight that our big conservation and special interest groups have no opinion on, yet their two biggest benefactors, the guides that bring the clients to buy the tags and get their 10%, and the division, which approves their projects, are the two biggest stakeholders in this, and there's no word from them. I'd really like to see those big organizations get together, and some of them have guides and outfitters that run them and come with an opinion on this, instead of being off in the shadows somewhere when this comes up. Yet we got letters on every other item tonight. So I think that's important.
Thanks, Brian. I'll share just a couple of brief comments. I think it's a it's overall, it's a disservice to the guides and outfitters to kind of rush something together and try to make it work. Guides and outfitters are some of the most loyal, law-abiding hunters, I would say, because a lot of them, their livelihoods depend on it. And I think it's a disservice to them as an industry and as individuals to, we'll just kind of work it and we'll get it right next year. And then pretty soon we're changing it every single year on you guys. And I just don't think that's fair for the industry. It's not fair for you as businessmen. And frankly, then maybe you decide to get out of it. And then we just lose more hunters and more funding and everything else. And I don't want that for the state of Utah. As tags and permits get harder and harder to get and obtain, people will hire guides more often than not. I want that to continue. I want it to be affordable. So what's the price of all these licenses going to do? It's just going to drive up the cost of guided hunts. And we're already driving up the cost of licenses and permits. It's just headed down a slippery slope, and I don't like to see that. I wish Utah had time that we could look at other states. Sometimes we just jump on this and say, oh, me too. We'll create all this. It's like most of this has been done in other states, and we can see if they've failed or if they've done well or not. Utah's still a free market guiding state. You can guide anywhere you can get at SRP. I'd like to see it that way. But I personally guide in Alaska, where it may be the most complicated state to guide in as far as paperwork. To go off into the field, you have to have 7 pieces of paper items with you on your person at all times to hunt in the field. And this is because too many hands have got into this guiding process and made a mess out of it. So now you have to answer to all these different divisions, carry all this paperwork just to make sure you're legal. And I don't want to see Utah become that someday. In my opinion, all of this started when someone got upset that there was multiple people behind a photo of a dead animal. They said, that's too many people. So they said, let's cut how many guides. And now here we are today, cutting more, adding more fees. And it's just getting more and more messy. And I hate to see that for everybody. So I don't know that there's a good place to brainstorm this. Maybe we get a committee, maybe we scrap all this and get a new bill next year. And Chad's back up here again, trying to explain a new bill that came through.
Oh, there'll be somebody else.
He's out. But my opinion would be we at least change the Forest Service portion or obtaining SRP language and strike section E completely. I'd like to see that at least in the motion. And I guess we'll roll with the rest. But I don't want to see outfitters getting in trouble this year at all. Tammy, help me out.
I'm not very good other than just snide remarks and smart ass comments, but you guys know where I stand. I mean, I'm at the legislative session for 7 weeks every year, and I just beat my head against a brick wall, this stupid crap that comes across the things. And you're spot on, Austin. Somebody saw a picture with too many people in it, and that's where this all came from. And I don't agree with it. It's a one incident thing and somebody got mad. But Riley, Verlin, you guys were all, Chad, were spot on with your comments. And so I'm going to leave it up to you to make a motion, whatever, and I'll second it.
Thanks, Tammy. Any other comments, or we'll entertain a motion? Chuck? Are you reaching for that microphone?
I'll do a motion.
All right.
Okay, I motion that we accept as provided or recommended, except with the change that we add the language that they don't have to have the SUP in hand at the time of the state. You want this language? I think this is the way Avery said it up in Central Region. He said, not require federal permits in the application materials for the state guiding license, but to require application permits to be obtained from the land management agency, and that the guides carry a copy of that when they're operating in the field. And what's that?
How about if we just say include the language approved by the central region?
Northern.
Relative.
Was it northern? Oh, it was northern. Okay.
Region relative to.
Yeah, let's do
COR
that.
definition.
I like that. And then you said you wanted to cut.
Eliminate section E that went into workers' comp and all of that. That was Avery's motion as well. Let's
Okay.
eliminate section E.
And remove that. Paragraph E, section 3.
Which that covered most of the business
Yeah.
stuff that we were worried about, right?
What is it? 3.2E. Remove that. Clear as mud, right?
Hold on. And strike what?
Strike section 3.2E.
3.2 E.
Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe
so,
my glasses
this is,
off.
I've got the motion is to approve as presented, but include the language provided by the Northern Region regarding state and federal, the order of state and federal permits, and strike section 3.2E.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Tammy comes in with her second. All right, ready to vote? Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion here in the room, raise your hand. 4 here in the room and 3 online. Oh, 4 online. Okay, all those opposed?
I abstain
You
because I
abstain.
am a.
Okay, so
Guide
motion
now.
passes 8-0 with 1 abstention. Okay. That clears up agenda item number 7.
Hold on, let me make one just
Oh.
comment in process to the guides and outfitters. And it's to the effort that Mr. Miller's trying to take. If the guides and outfitters will get organized and speak with a united voice and things are going to go a lot smoother. Our biggest nightmare is to have half of you saying one thing and half of you saying another, because that's a no-win for everybody. So if we can, over the next few years, get organized so it's similar to the CWMU Association, the landowner associations, the sportsmen's groups that provide a venue for this group to speak with a cohesive and united voice, it's going to be better for everybody. So,
Thanks, Kevin.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but another thing that I think is really important to keep the consumer. It's about that. How he wants to do his home. So that gets overlooked every single time all your meeting. I don't think I'm not trying to.
No, I want to, as we close this, I want to say something to that. Thanks, Dave. This is not over, right? So the wildlife board meeting, public comment is still open, right? And if it's last wildlife board meeting, they received very little public comment, right? You brought them to the RACs, but the wildlife board meeting that's coming up, where they'll address this, is wide open for comment. And the board meeting's June 12th in Farmington. So send in your emails, send in your comments. We'll be attending, I'll be attending as the Southern representative for the wildlife board, but it's not over. And any other ideas, any other unification we can get on some ideas is still on the table. So thank you, everybody that came for this agenda item. Thanks, Chad.
I will say thank you to the RAC and to the public. It wasn't fun, but I enjoyed it. So I
Okay.
appreciate it. Thank
We're
you.
going to take a quick break, 9 minutes, and then we'll start again. Thanks. Let's go. So we took a quick break and we're back. Agenda item number 8. Are we for sure live on YouTube though? Salt Lake, are we live on YouTube still?
You're live.
Okay. Agenda item number 8, CWMU's the public land variance request. Chad Wilson, welcome. We had asked
Thank
for
you.
this, right? Years ago, anytime there's public land
Yeah.
within a CW, we get to see it.
Yeah, so there was 4 that we're looking at today. 2 of them are renewals, so they've been approved in the past, and 2 of them haven't had public land in them. So we're bringing those before all the RACs and the Wildlife Board. They do get reviewed we do it every 3 years on renewal. By law, it has to be every 5 years. So it's easiest just to do it every 3 years. So yeah, we have those. That's kind of in a nutshell what we're talking about tonight.
Perfect. Any questions for Chad? Chad, I have a question on trade lands. Just, we've all become accustomed to the yellow sign, right? CWMU, stay off. Whether you think it's public or private, it may be included in the CWMU and it's got to be posted. But what are the posting requirements realistically for these trade lands? Is it just, you got to go on Hunt Planner and pull it up? Or when I drive up to that piece of private, is it going to say, this is open to hunting?
Yeah, the later. And it'll be posted the same as what trespass requirements are. And there'll be signs there that say trade lands open to hunting big game species during those timeframes. So yeah, you'll be able to see it on the Hunt Planner. You'll be able to see it on the ground as well. That should be this fall. They should have them good to
Because
go
they're
this
not
fall.
going to take down their no trespassing signs, right? They're just going to be another sign next to that one.
Yeah, so I think it's a combination. I wish I could have come prepared with one that they had, but it kind of looks, I think it does say trade lands and no trespassing. So it specifies that it's trade lands and you can do because it's not open for everything, right? It's open for hunting big game. So it's different than your typical trespassing sign. So if you're looking online and you're like, okay, this is pretty close to where some trade land should be, that sign should be different enough that it sticks out, and then you can see that it will say both no trespassing and their trade lands to hunt big game species.
Okay. Now Chad, the northern region, I believe it was, had some hesitation with Ingham Peak and one of the other ones, and they did not approve it, correct?
Yes. I'm trying to remember if it was northern or central. I think it was the central.
Maybe it was central.
Yeah.
And they did not approve the variance, correct?
Yeah, they recommended denial on TL Bar and Ingham.
Do you care to speak to that at all? Why they did? I mean, the CWMU was a pass, correct? And DWR's recommendation is pass or approve.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. That was our recommendations. The TL Bar is just under 5,000 acres, and there's a piece in it in the middle of it that was inaccessible. And I think that was part of it is with the new corner crossing law. We're still trying to work through that as a division. But that one, you could corner cross into it. And I think for that reason, they're like, well, it's accessible now. So they pulled that one out. And Ingham Peak, I think they just didn't like the terms of the trade, even though at the northern region, so central region went first. Northern region, the biologist stood up and said he actually went and hunted the trade lands during the hunt, and he saw, I think he said 70 deer, like 8 bucks, a couple 3 points. So felt like it was a fair trade. The stuff, some of the land, a little piece of it that they have that's public is good hunting, but it is, I can't remember if it's to follow a ridge line or a fence line, but yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chad. Any questions from the public? Brian?
Which region are those 2 located in?
The 2 that they're both in the region, northern region.
They're both in there, the
Mhm.
ones that didn't
Yeah.
pass it then.
Yep. No, the central region was the one.
They're in the northern and they passed it, and then the central's the one that didn't.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, summarize public comment.
No written comments, two people that expressed an opinion, one strongly agreed, one somewhat disagreed. So the average is a 4.
Yeah. Okay. Have public comment on this agenda item? Hand up, Nick. Thank you. Go ahead, Nick.
Nick Dax, representing Utah Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. For the CWMU variances, we feel that the variances requested for the Prohibition Springs is fair with what the public gets in exchange, as long as the hunt quality remains good. And then for the proposals we oppose the variance request for the Ingram Peak, the TL Bar Ranch, and the Blackhawk CWMUs, because we do not feel that the proposed exchanges are any benefit to the public hunter or the sportsman. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. Okay, we'll open it up for RAC discussion. It's hard to be super familiar with areas that are in the north. I did look at the maps and, you're like, well, that's just a bunch of low country. Well, it's an antelope area. Okay. And maybe it's valid, but corner crossing thing is, it's tough for me to say I'm going all in on corner crossing a piece of land in northern Utah, but that's a little early. But I am all for public lands remaining accessible to the public wherever possible.
Can I clarify just on what you just said? I think that's one thing that I feel like I've kind of failed a little bit of clarifying, but it is accessible to the public, right? It is for the hunting of the species. So the species that are in the CWMU, like you can access the public land for anything but hunting the species that are in the CWMU. So just a lot of times we talk about it and we talk about it being inaccessible. I think sometimes we see the yellow sign and think I can't cross there. It should be a different yellow sign. It shouldn't have no trespassing on it if it's on public land. And you should still be able to, if you can legally access the public land, you can still legally access it to do whatever you want besides hunting those things. So you could hunt coyotes, you could hunt upland game, have a picnic, do whatever you want on them.
Yeah, thanks, Chad, for that. That clarification is great. I just know how it is on the ground when you're actually doing that and you're trying to decide which app on your phone to trust, and Hunt Planner won't load. And you're like, I don't know if this is going to hold up in court if I stand on this piece of land. And so you start seeing signs, what most hunters turn away, even if it is public. And CWMU signs are, sky's the limit on how well they post those. Seen some so faded you don't know what it is. But. Comments or emotion?
Maybe both. I'm a little bit the same way. I looked at the map. I really tried to understand it. It didn't look to me like anything was so landlocked that there couldn't be some kind of again, especially with the clarification that you just had that there be access other than for that species. With that said, I would make a motion to accept as presented.
Okay, we got a motion by Riley to accept as presented, which would be the approval of all 4, correct?
I would second that.
Second by Chuck. Any discussion needed? Okay, we'll go to a vote. Raise your hand. All's in favor of Riley's motion. That is unanimous here in the room. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, unanimous. Passes 9-0. Thank you. Thank you, Chad. How did you get moved up the agenda so far? You're supposed to be at the end, Chad.
That was supposed to be part of the last RAC.
Oh, got it. Okay. Agenda item number 9, WMA exemptions from license requirement with Chelsea Duke. And I believe she is online for us.
I am. Hi, everybody.
Welcome, Chelsea. Do you care to share any updates or clarification needed, or can we go into questions?
I would love to just share a little something here.
Okay.
So for those that you don't know, I'm the Wildlife Lands Coordinator for the division out of the Salt Lake office. I would love to just address a few points that came up during the public comment in addition to the video that I presented. So first, House Bill 309 is a bill that was passed by the Utah legislature during the 2025 session, and it went into effect on May 7th. The requirement to hold a valid hunting, fishing, or combination license was put into state law and is not a rule that was implemented by the Wildlife Board. The DWR and the Wildlife Board are now charged with implementing and upholding this new law. Therefore, this rule proposal before you is meant to define terms and make some additional exemptions to this requirement. Second, I want to clarify the authority of the Wildlife Board in relation to this new legislation. The bill states that the Wildlife Board may not exempt an individual on the basis that the individual is not engaged in hunting, trapping, or fishing within a WMA. Therefore, the scope of the board's authority is limited to the following two items. The bill specifically outlines the Wildlife Board's rulemaking authority, stating that the Wildlife Board may make rules to define purposes of one, what is meant to be expressly exempt under this title from a requirement to hold a license, or two, what constitutes an educational program or education or visitor center. Lastly, I will just say that this law and rule are applicable to counties located in the northern and central region, and that includes Salt Lake County, Utah, Weber, and Davis. Happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you, Chelsea. I want to ask a quick question I probably shouldn't ask, but how many DWR employees hold a license? That's not public information probably, but they don't have to when operating under official duty, but would they have to just recreationally?
So with the rule that we're proposing here would be to exempt employees from this license requirement while they're on a WMA doing their official duties. So that's one of the rules that we're proposing that was left out of the bill, but it's within the Wildlife Board's scope. So currently, division employees do not have to have a hunting or fishing license to work for the division and to perform their duties. But the way that the bill is written, if an employee right now was on one of these 30 wildlife management areas, they would be required to have a hunting and fishing license, even if they're just working. So that's why we are proposing this additional rule to make it not an exemption. Does that make sense?
And Chelsea, if they're on their own time, if they're not doing official duties, and they would have to have a license to access the WMAs.
Correct.
So it only gives the exemption if they're acting as a division employee.
And during a specific activity that they are supposed to be conducting on that WMA.
Do you guys not offer like an insider discount for fishing licenses or?
We don't.
Okay. Rachel, you got a question?
Yeah, I had a question. Given the categories, I just wanted to clarify. So say you were a researcher who wasn't a division employee or financially contracted or a volunteer, but you were, say, worked with the university or the BLM or the Forest Service and you were collaborating, would you be part of that exemption as well to do your work, obviously? Yeah.
So there's a couple of ways that I can answer that. So the first is most commonly if, let's say, a university employee or student is conducting research for their master's or PhD thesis, we often issue special use permits for that individual and their team to go on to a wildlife management area to conduct that research. There's some nuance there, but oftentimes the work that they'd be doing would be an unlawful use of division lands. So we want to make sure that they're following the law and getting that permit. Alternatively, let's say if there's somebody who's a researcher or something that's accompanying a division employee onto a WMA for, let's say, capture purposes or research that the division is conducting, they would be included in this under the volunteer or invitee exemption, the way that it was written in the rule. So we feel that this new addition would cover both of those situations.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Chelsea. Thanks, Rachel. Any other questions? All right. Do you want to summarize public comment?
No written comments, 2 people that expressed an opinion, 1 strongly agreed, 1 somewhat agreed.
Tammy, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a little slow raising my hand. So are we talking just any kind of general access to a WMA or just someone that's working on it? Because I know there's WMAs in Beaver County that have passed through roads. So just clarify that.
Sure. So this law and this rule are only on wildlife management areas in Salt Lake, Weber, Utah, and Davis counties. So there are no WMAs in the southern region that would be impacted by this law.
Okay, thank you.
Chelsea, I assume there will be signage. Signage would change at these WMAs, correct?
That is correct. We already have signage up on all of these properties advising the public of which areas the WMAs have. And then also there's a QR code where you can get more information about the new law and buy a license right then and there.
Cool. Thank you, Rachel.
Sorry, I just had another question. I know you're not the legislator that came up with this, but do you know why they chose hunting licenses instead of something like day use fees for like bird watchers?
Yes. So not only do hunting and fishing license, not only do we get that money from the hunting and fishing license, but additionally, hunting and fishing licenses are what is used to give federal dollars to state. So we get Pittman Robertson or Dingle Johnson dollars through a complicated formula, and it's based on the number of licensed sales. So if we were to do a, if the legislation allowed for a WMA pass or a non-consumptive pass, we would not be able to stretch that dollar any further than just the money that it would bring in.
Thanks again.
Thanks, Bart. Go ahead.
Kind of following on that, and I have comments which I'll save for discussion. So what are the purposes of wildlife and, well, of WMAs, wildlife waterfowl management areas?
Yeah, thanks, Bart. So WMAs are different than other public lands because they were purchased specifically for wildlife habitat, wildlife populations, and then for hunting or fishing recreation. So we do not receive general funds very often for purchases or management of wildlife management areas. So these properties, oh, go ahead.
You're giving a lot of discussion. I mean, I'm online looking at the following purposes, and it seems that you're missing one of the purposes. I just want you to say it. It's an enjoy wildlife-based recreation. And that's not hunting, that's not fishing, that's watchable wildlife. And so I'm jumping to my comments. See, it seems that Utah legislators, I'll just say it now, Utah legislators disregard anything but hunting and fishing. Hence, as a watchable wildlife rep, I have to have a hunting permit or a combination permit. So anyone in a class 1 or class 2 county has to have a hunting permit, even though they may find it morally reprehensible to hunt, but they want to see or look at wildlife. And it's just, if a purpose is enjoy wildlife-based recreation, what value do you see in non-hunting or fishing wildlife-based recreation? So that's a question for you.
Sure. So we, of course, value non-consumptive uses of wildlife. You know, it's part of our mission and our goal that wildlife is for everyone. And so, you know, I can't speak for the bill sponsor, but I think that we're not trying to exclude non-consumptive use on wildlife management areas. You can still come onto a wildlife management area in any of these counties and birdwatch or view wildlife and not participate in hunting and fishing activities. And so it's hard to answer that question fully without, you know, the bill sponsor here to explain that thought process. But that's my understanding, is that, you know, if you're just purchasing a license, that's the requirement now, and you can still participate in all those activities. We're not excluding that use from our properties.
No, I understand that. Well, I'll save my comments for later.
Bart, you can share your comments now, Bart. We appreciate your perspective.
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to the same thing. as you know, agricultural representatives to the RAC get an exemption, but watchable wildlife, which exactly implies they're not hunting, but they enjoy it, have to get a hunting permit. Same thing in some of our largest populated areas of Utah. For them to enjoy watchable wildlife recreation type activities, they have to get a hunting license. It doesn't make any sense at all. And it just seems an end around to exclude them. Now, I've had comments with people at the RAC specifically about how do you extract usage fees from non-hunters? Because I think you should. But having them purchase a hunting permit seems a rather insidious way to do it, especially say morally they don't like to hunt or they find issue with it. There should be some other usage fee that can be applied to non-hunters or fishers or fishermen, women, whatever the right term is. Because I do think, there should be some sort of fee extraction for using these areas. I'm not against that. I just don't like the methodology in which that the state is doing it and avoiding the entire RAC, i.e. public input process.
Thanks, Bart.
Those are my 2 cents.
No, we appreciate that. Any other comments from this RAC? Chuck?
Yeah, I know these are not in southern Utah, but both the central and northern region wildlife or the forest reps asked that we be consistent and ask for an exemption to the hunting fishing requirement for federal employees, federal land management employees while on the performance of their duties, because sometimes we end up on those properties or crossing them or actually working on them sometimes. So we'd ask for that same exemption here just to be consistent.
Because right now, just to be clear, all the exemptions are only for state divisions, correct? That's the only exemptions. Okay. Any other comments or entertain a motion? Chuck, do you want to put that in a motion?
A motion man today. I don't know. So I would make a motion to accept as proposed with the added addition of an exemption for federal and land management employees while conducting their official duties.
Okay, we got a motion by Chuck, a second by Bryant. Any discussion? Yeah, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. And 1, 2, 4, unanimous. Perfect, thank you. That was everybody. Well, all right, I was going off of, I stole the central region's verbiage too, and you were very similar to that from Avery. Federal land management employees while conducting their official duties will have an exemption and will. Yeah. Okay. Bryant. Thank you, Chelsea, for your on this and joining us virtually. And thank you, Bart, for your perspective. I totally understand the license being called hunting fishing. That implies a take. And even if said license holder never takes, it still says that. And we appreciate your perspective on that. We'll keep working that way.
Thanks.
Let's go to agenda item number 10, the sage grouse translocation. Heather, welcome to the party.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for sticking with us.
Absolutely.
Should we open it up for questions to Heather about the sage grouse translocation? Do you have any sites or clarification we need to speak to first?
No, just if you guys want anything that you want to ask, I've joined the meeting so I can share screens and all of that.
Questions, Chuck?
Yeah, I just had a question. I'm not familiar with the sage grouse survival when we transplant them. Do we have a percentage of survival that we count as good, and anything below that we're not happy with? Or
Sure. I mean, with the strawberry translocations that we did, we had 60% survival, which is great because our annual survival, it ranges within that anyway for yearlings and adult females, can range anywhere from 38% to 85%. Adult male survival is a bit lower due to them just being bigger bird, having more energy expenditures in general to keep up with their physiology, as well as being on Lex. It makes them an easy target. So yeah, we've had really high success with our translocations in Utah in the past.
Any other questions? Russell?
I have a question on it. So when you're relocating them, are you relocating them to areas that are already sage grouse, or just to a whole new area?
Yes, these are augmentations. So they are considered just to help bolster a current population. And what we're doing with these specifically, if you just want me to backtrack for just a second, with what we're doing from the Blue and Diamond Mountain areas, the source sites, we're taking birds to Tabby Mountain WMA, and that's within the Strawberry SGMA. And the reason that we're doing that is because there's all this restored habitat, but grouse, because they have that site fidelity to their lekking, nesting, and brooding areas, they just aren't distributing themselves into that usable space. So just to help bolster populations, helping to increase distribution, decrease some density dependence that could be happening in some more crowded areas. That's the same thing that we're looking to do in the Maitogi Mountain area of the Parker, and also in the Browns Park area in the Uinta.
Yeah, another question. Can you tell me how the sage grouse are doing in like southern Utah? Because we used to hunt them, and now
We
there's no
still
hunting.
hunt them.
In southern Utah?
Yes, the Parker.
Well,
is
over
still-
there, but I'm talking specifically like Hamlin Valley, the Southwest Desert.
Sure, hang on one second, because I just had
um,
that tab open so I can give you the
So
end of season counts. We still have a couple of issues with our app that we're rectifying, and a couple of paper time count sheets that we're adding up. But what we have on Bald Hills, we've got a little bit of a decline. We had 184 males counted. This is again preliminary. And then in our Hamlin Valley, we only had 55. Hamlin Valley has been one of those that just has had a lot of drought, and we've had a lot of issues out that way. But most of our populations are up. For Panguitch, we have 413, so that's a 5% increase this year, but 13% increase last year. Parker Mountain is 1,533, so that's a 23% increase this year, and it was a 36% increase last year. And that should cover our southern region SGMAs. And so we do have a couple of declines. Again, the numbers aren't quite final, but they are doing better. And just to keep in mind with the hunt structure, we do keep the total permits allocated for the fall hunt, for those hunts within 10% of the estimated fall population. And that's to avoid any additive mortality due to hunting. We also structured our season dates that way for that reason. We did see earlier on in previous years, we have seen that there's been possibly more brood hens and chicks harvested. And that's why we push those season dates back further into September to allow for more brood breakup to occur. So our goal with the way that we hunt sage grouse is to avoid any additive mortality through hunting. And that's why we only have the 4 areas open, the Box Elder, Rich, and the Uinta and Parker.
So just to clarify, those were the numbers from this spring that you were talking about?
Yes. Yep.
When you say Panguitch, is that,
Panguitch Sage Grouse Management Area.
okay, is that south end of the Beaver then partially?
Let's pull up.
They're shaking their head that.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but I was just going to clarify further with a fun map, just
Yeah.
because we love fun stuff. So hang on one second, and I'll share my screen. And then any other questions while I'm pulling this up?
So how do you determine, in a particular area, if you, could let out a few tags or a few permits, or, because it seems like once an area gets closed for something, it's really hard to get it back.
I'm actually really glad that you brought that up, because if you remember a few years ago, we did close the Parker hunt. We had a lot of drought. Sage grouse are already using aspen edge rather than true mesic habitat for their brood rearing areas. But the very next year, we were able to open it up. And now here we are with these great record numbers at 1,500 birds. So we did, just to err on the side of caution, we didn't drop below the threshold of 500 to where we would normally want to close a hunt. But just out of being responsible, we closed it for a year to see what would happen, brought it back with just, instead of the 10% harvest, a 5% harvest threshold for the following year. And then we've been able to increase incrementally since then. So I feel that we are trying to be responsible and trying to keep the opportunity for the hunters as well. And as you know, with huntable species also garner a lot of funding from PR. So it's a win for them for it to stay open.
Yeah, so Russell, the minimum threshold is to need to count at least 500 males within an SGMA before we would consider having a hunt, but then we're pretty conservative even at that.
Sorry, the 500 is the total fall estimated population, but you're good. Mhm.
So that comes to about 150 males counted.
So is there any areas on here you want me to zoom in on? You asked about the penguin.
You're asking about the penguins.
Yep, sure. Yeah. So we've got Penguich SGMA and then Bald Hills bordering that. Mhm.
Yeah. Answer your question, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay.
So with penguins looking good, are we talking about hunting that or?
No, we're not talking about opening any new hunts at this time.
All right, any questions from the public? Summarize public comment? You have that for us, Kevin?
So only two comments on this one, no written comments, just expressing an opinion, and one strongly agreed and one that was neutral. So overall support.
Great. No public comment cards on this. We'll go to RAC discussion. Oh, we got one. Nick's got one. Come on up, Nick.
Nick the X representing Utah backcountry hunters and anglers. We support the proposed translocation of sage grouse to build populations of the Tidwell Slopes, Maitag Mountains, Tabby Mountains, and Browns Peak. Our organization supports the efforts like this that continue to help with the proliferation of the iconic sage grouse, and personally, hopefully, one day can draw a tag versus just accumulating points. Thanks.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. All right, RAC discussion on this item. Garland?
It's more a question. Are any of these sage grouse, can they be reared? I guess the next thing is pen reared. Do you hatch them out or it's just trap them and move them that way?
Just trap and move. Yeah, there's really low efficacy with pen-reared sage grouse. There may be some new methodologies that might come out to improve things and change things, but right now it's just, there's so many intricacies that they learn from growing up and even just with the egg being laid and hearing the hen's calls in the egg and everything, that it's just really imperative to try to translocate when we can. And while we have numbers that are high and we can't stockpile birds, and we do have evidence that taking more than, well, at least 50 birds out of a source site isn't any detriment at all to that source site. And there's new evidence that we may be able to take even more than that. And we're only asking to take between 25 and 35 for this first translocation to Strawberry.
Right, ready to make a motion?
Well, I just want to say I appreciate them doing this work because I have fond memories of that South in the Beaver back in the day when I was just a little kid, but I'd make motion pass as is. So
Motion by Bryant, pass as presented, second by Verland. You got that? Yep. Bryant and Verland. All right, all those in favor, raise your hand. We got 5 in here and 4 online. Unanimous. Thank you. We're going to continue on with agenda item number 11, possession and release of pen-reared game birds with Heather again.
Yes. If anybody has any specific questions, just we wanted to further clarify the rule and address some disease testing discrepancies that have occurred. And so if there's any specific questions, we can answer those.
Any questions? Seeing none, we'll move to summarize public comment.
Probably the same two people with the same two opinions. One strongly agreed, one was neutral, and only two people expressed an opinion.
Okay. No public comment cards on this one. RAC discussion. Or motion.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve this item agenda as presented.
Thank you, Riley. Approve as presented. Motions on the table.
I second that.
Second by Chuck. All those in favor, raise your hand. 5 and 2. I'm missing 1. Brooklyn's up. Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Heather. All right, now we're going to go to agenda item number 12, the Severe Paiute Big Game Winter Range WMA Habitat Plan. This is unique to our region.
Yeah, just for your region. So Avery didn't have anything to say about it. Glad to be here like the others. Glad I could hear all the other stuff. Hopefully you've seen the presentation. This is a habitat management plan for 4 units, if you want to call it, 4 wildlife management areas that provide big game winter range in Sevier and Paiute County. All have very similar management needs, and that's why they're all under the same plan. There are other properties in Sevier and Paiute County that have their own plan if they have a different need or a different management, but these 4 have very similar, and so we put them all under one plan. Pretty simple. We're excited about these properties, and they're doing their job on the landscape. Not a whole lot changing. It's just kind of an update saying they're still here. We're still doing good things. The one that we're actively doing something more on is Poverty Flat right here in Monroe, where we're trying to combat cheatgrass, and we're winning, getting better and better at that, but we'll continue to do that and try to convert that back to better shrubland. With that, if you guys have any questions, happy to try to answer.
Any questions for Gary on this one? Questions from the public?
Thank you for letting me be here.
Summarize public comment. We got any on this one?
Yes, 2, and they were both strongly agreed. And I will mention just for, and Gary had it in his presentation. Gary presented both of these to the Sevier and Paiute County commissions, and they both were happy to give their support. So.
Very good. All right, we'll open it up for RAC discussion. I thought it was action. It is informational.
It is information. Yep.
Mine says action. Sorry.
Besides, we always do what Gary asks us to do anyway.
Well, I'll just say thanks for the information. That sounds good. All right. We're getting close to the end. Agenda item number 13. Turn the time over to Kevin.
Okay, so we do need to elect at a minimum a new vice chair. Riley is our current vice chair, and he will be he's served 2 full terms on the RAC and isn't eligible for another. So we'll be saying goodbye to Riley and also Verlin and Tammy. And before we leave, I've got a gift I'd like to give to those 3 individuals to express the appreciation from the division. But so I'm looking for nominations from the RAC for a chair. Austin can continue in that role if that's where you would like him to be. And I did ask him if he's open to that. He indicated that he is. But we do need at a minimum, a new vice chair nominated.
So I'd like Austin to stay right where he's at. It's okay with Austin. I like it.
I concur.
Okay, how about a nomination for a vice chair?
I second that.
Okay, so we have a nomination from to keep Austin as the chair and to nominate Bryant as the vice chair. Bryant, were you open to accepting that nomination?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other nominations that any members of the RAC would like to bring forward? If not, this is the one time I get to ask for the vote. Can I get by a raise of hands who supports those nominations? Are you going to vote for yourself, Austin? You get to vote on this one.
I don't know. It feels weird to vote for yourself. Yeah. Fill it in.
It's like liking your.
Very self-congratulatory.
I'm gonna
voted for
call
himself,
it
so-
unanimous. Okay, and then Bill and Adam, would you guys bring up those? So as I mentioned, Berland and Tammy and Riley have all graciously served 2 full terms, which is what they're eligible for, and will be leaving the RAC. And let me give you a little background on these prints. So Clark Bronson, back in the 50s and 60s, worked for the Division of Wildlife and was an artist at the same time. And we own the copyrights to all of his prints, which I think are beautiful prints. And so Berland, to show you that I'm sincere in saying that I'm going to miss you, I'll let you go first. If there one of those that you would like over the others? I would have brought it if I did. The mule deer? Okay. Tammy, I'll have you go second. I know you can't see them, but we've got a color print of an elk, we've got a sage grouse, and we've got a bighorn sheep.
So there's 3 choices.
There's 3 choices: an elk, a sage grouse, or a bighorn sheep.
Well, I'll take the elk because I'm probably never going to get one. So that would be the only time I get to hang one on my wall.
Okay. Riley, you have it? Take the bighorn sheep. Okay. And thank you. It's a lot of time, a lot of late nights, including tonight, and we appreciate the time that you guys have spent and the perspectives you bring. The whole point of this process is to have varying perspectives. Even if, at times if they don't agree with what we're proposing, that's okay. And that's part of the process. So I appreciate the time and effort that you guys have all put in. Thank you.
I'll just echo that real quick. It is a thankless job, and I've personally, as the chair, have looked up to every one of you, Tammy, Verlin, Riley, both as friends and as co-members of this RAC, for your perspective and everything you do. And even when it's not fun, I sure appreciate it and appreciate you being a constant for us, for me, and for the Southern region. We do have a couple openings that you can apply for until May 31st. So if anybody is interested, applications or for nominations are open for an agriculture spot, elected official, obviously, and then sportsman.
Yeah, and I have been soliciting nominations from as many different groups as I can and have been receiving some nominations, but we need more before the end of the month. So,
yeah.
Tammy, I haven't received an official nomination from UAC yet. I assume that's coming.
Yes, that's coming. Sorry, I dropped the ball.
Thank you.
Okay, that is
Kevin. I just like to tell them all thank you too. I've learned a lot from all of them in the last year or so I've been on this, because I didn't know what to expect. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Brent.
I just want to say thanks for putting up with me and my colorful language, but I've enjoyed it for the most part. So you guys
Tammy,
are all good people.
When's your next commission meeting? If I can make it, I will come and present your print to you there.
It's on the 10th of June.
Okay, if I can make it, I'll be there.
Sounds
Thank-
good. Oh, actually, it's next Tuesday. Never mind.
It's a big difference from June 10th to next Tuesday.
I don't know. I can't keep track. It probably is the 10th. I have to look at my calendar.
Okay, anything else from the RAC before we wrap up for this evening? This concludes our agenda. The board meeting will be June 12th up in Farmington to finalize all of this. And we should expect an announcement from the governor shortly on new board members.
Yeah,
4 to be exact.
I will say that the governor has selected the 4. I don't know what all the names are right now, but they have been sent to the Senate. There's a 30-day comment period, so I assume that information is out there somewhere, but then it's sometime in June, middle of June, when the Senate is scheduled to vote on the governor's nominations.
And then the new RAC members and the new board members will begin in August.
Correct.
So that's kind of the plan. Everybody have a great summer, and we'll see you at the June board meeting.
See you guys. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn. We got it.